Chapter 962. The bewitching purple lightning sparkled with brilliant arcs of electricity, like a neon rainbow in the curtain of rain, reflecting a gorgeous light, illuminating the entire battlefield like a dream. Surrounded by the dazzling purple lightning, Hyojin, who stood quietly under the curtain of rain, seemed unreal. Purple lightning, looking at Hyojin, Darui opened his mouth slightly, his eyes filled with astonishment. As a lightning ninja, he knows better than anyone how difficult it is to change the nature of a single chakra, because even the 4 generations laying cannot do it. Even though he possessed the mist escape bloodline limit boundary, he had only managed to cultivate the black lightning after obtaining the manuscripts left behind by 3 generations of Lei Ying and experiencing countless failures. He thought that he was the only one in the shinobi world who could do such a thing. That was why he always looked at the other lightning ninjas with a superior attitude. The lazy expression on his face was a kind of arrogance that was even higher than coldness. But now everything is different. There is a second person in the shinobi world who can do it, and the nature of the change is completely different from his, so obviously there is no possibility of him secretly learning it. Putting away the surprise on his face, Darui re-examined Hyojin and said, "Kirin, it seems that I have underestimated you." At this moment, Hyojin did not pay attention to Darui, who had a complicated expression on his face. He was completely immersed in exploring the violet lightning, unable to extricate himself. That's right, this was actually the first time he had successfully executed the violet lightning. Bathed in the dazzling purple lightning, he looked like a god who controlled lightning. It was as if he had completely controlled the unbridled purple lightning. Everyone, including Darui, was dumbfounded by his appearance. But in fact, it was only after he had observed the black lightning on Darui's body from a close distance and felt the change in the nature of the black lightning that he grasped the hint of enlightenment and crossed the threshold that he had been unable to cross for a long time. For the first time, he touched upon the key technique of changing the nature of a single attribute of chakra. Therefore, at this moment, he had to remember this feeling, because the change of a single attribute of chakra is too much of a test of a ninja's ability to control chakra. Even though this was a Thunder Escape clone that had fused with Kakashi cells and had a high affinity with the Thunder Chakra, Hyojin still ran into a lot of obstacles in the process of exploring the purple lightning. Therefore, the purple lightning that he managed to cast by chance was not a guaranteed success. He had to remember this feeling to ensure that he could completely master the purple lightning. However, others did not know about this. Looking at Hyojin, who seems to be brewing some earth-shattering ninjutsu, whether it is Darui or the several jonins who are not far away from the invigilators, they all felt an inexplicable pressure. This is bad. I can only fight with all my might. Immediately, Darui came to a realization and unleashed all of his chakra without holding back. In an instant, the black lightning surrounding him rapidly expanded and then suddenly gathered together, transforming into an incomparably huge black lightning beast. On the side of the field, looking at the confrontation between the black lightning and purple lightning in front of him, Asma's mouth slightly trembled. "Kakashi, didn't you say that Darui is the only one who can do that?" I didn't expect that either." Kakashi was a little speechless. After losing the Sharingan, Kakashi actually lost the ability to use rays able to attack the enemy at high speed. So he once thought of improving rays from a simple surprise attack ninjutsu to a multi-purpose thunder release ninjutsu. But after losing the high-speed surprise attack, the power of rays also decreased, becoming a very common thunder release ninjutsu. This made Kakashi extremely distressed. For this reason, he also considered using the change of the nature chakra to enhance the power of rays. But after really trying it, he deeply understood how difficult it was to change the nature of a single attribute of chakra, almost as difficult as developing a Kekkei Genkai. Therefore, this idea was temporarily put on hold. However, after seeing Druid's black lightning and Kirin's purple lightning with his own eyes, and feeling the nature of the lightning release chakra that had changed, Kuroto faintly felt that he seemed to have grasped something. In the monitoring room, with the help of a surviving monitor on the edge of the battlefield. Everyone in the monitoring room also witnessed the scene of the confrontation between black lightning and purple lightning. Everyone in the monitoring room was standing at the top of the ninja world, so there was no doubt about their vision and knowledge. Drui's black lightning alone was enough to make people speechless, and the purple lightning that Kieran and the Mist used was even more shocking. How is this possible? The always strong 4 generations lay and couldn't help but show a trace of confusion on his face. The 3 generations and Noki directly floated in the air and came in front of the monitor screen and muttered to himself, Is this a change of the nature of a single attribute of chakra? The 3 generations Naruto, who was known as the Doctor of Ninjutsu, gently nodded and said, Well, this is not a Kekii Genkai. It is indeed a change of the nature of a single attribute of chakra. Zhuan Xiaochun, who was in charge of Mai's intelligence collection, seemed to think of something and said, I heard that in the era of 3 generations Laying, Cloud Village had developed a special thunder release. Is it this black lightning? Because they are now allies, 4 generations Laying didn't hide anything and said bluntly, Yes, the black lightning was indeed developed by 3 generations Sama, but before it was perfected, the 3rd Shinobi World War broke out, and 3 generations Sama also died in the war, so the black lightning was almost lost in the Cloud Village. After saying that, 4 generations Laying suddenly turned his head and looked at 4 generations Mizuki Jigura and asked, What's the matter with the purple lightning of Kirin? Is your Mist Village also secretly developing the thunder release? Because of the obvious difference, 4 generations Laying didn't accuse the Mist Village of stealing their black lightning, but he wondered when the Mist Village developed the thunder release so deeply. Suddenly, everyone in the room looked at Yagura. Even Mei and Aojirai, who were standing next to Yagura, were no exception. Feeling the inquisitive eyes of everyone, Yagura turned a deaf ear to them. Because he didn't know the details of Kirin, he just followed Hyojin's instructions and arranged the identity of a Mist Genin for Kirin. As for other things, he didn't know more than anyone else. Itachi, who was disguised as Hyojin, was actually the same. He just followed Hyojin's instructions and provided convenience for the Mist Village's team. He didn't know who Kirin was, but he knew that there was another group of mysterious and powerful ninjas under Hyojin's command, such as Uchiha Flames, Wind Chime, Xidagarba, and others that he wasn't familiar with. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave me gifts yesterday. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 963. In the Rain. The gradual accumulation of pressure made it difficult for Darui to bear. A layer of fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, intertwining with the rainwater and sliding down his cheeks. I can't wait any longer. Darui clenched his teeth and decided to strike first. In his eyes, the aura of the hidden fog Qilin was getting stronger and stronger, and the purple lightning lingering on its body was even more unbridled. It was about to overwhelm his black lightning. Therefore, he couldn't wait, and he didn't dare to wait any longer. Thunder release, black spot. After completing the hand seal, Darui clenched his fists and waved them at the Qilin. Roar! The giant black panther made of black lightning seemed to come alive at this moment. It looked up and roared like a thunderclap. After that, the black panther restrained its body, and with a swish, it pounced towards Kuroto. Everywhere it passed was like a black hole, and no matter if it was the curtain of rain, the air, or even light and shadow, everything was swallowed by it. In this thunderous roar, Hyojin, who was immersed in exploring the purple lightning, came back to his senses. Seeing the Black Panther pouncing at him like a bolt of lightning, he had no time to dodge. He put his palms together and activated the purple lightning on his body to meet it. In an instant, in the storm, the black lightning and purple lightning that had been brewing for a long time collided. Rumble! In an instant, an extremely dazzling light flashed in the forest of death. This light was brighter than the sun and instantly dispelled all the darkness and deepness, making it hard for people to open their eyes. This strong light only flashed for a moment. Then there was a deafening roar. Amidst the huge roar, the tyrannical lightning released chakra rolled up the boundless airflow and the curtain of rain, pouring out in all directions like a flood breaking a dam. At the edge of the battlefield, Kakashi, Guy, Asma, and the other Jonins were all shocked. They were blown away by the violent storm like kites that had their strings cut. Samyi and Shi from Darui's team, Shuei from Hyejin's team, as well as Xiang Lin, Deadale, and the others who were fighting were all affected by this storm. They were like rootless duckweeds being swept around by the airwaves. Some crashed into trees, some fell into the ground, and some were even blown far away. In the distance, Shikamaru, who was covering his eyes with his hands, had a puzzled look on his face. What happened over there? The sudden flash of light just now had caused his eyes to be intensely stimulated. Even now, his vision had not fully recovered. Woo-woo. Akamaru, who was lying on top of Ya's head, whined twice, and then hid in Ya's clothes with a fearful face. The extremely violent thunder released chakra that was dissipating in the air made him instinctively feel fear. Ya comforted Akamaru and said, "No matter what happened over there, it's definitely not a good thing." After observing with Bakugan, Hinata said, "The chakra over there is very chaotic, and the air is full of thunder-release chakra. We better not go over there." On the other side, Orochimaru turned over and jumped to the crown of the tallest tree nearby. He looked at the battlefield on Hyejin's side, and a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. This level of thunder-release ninjutsu, even an ordinary Jonin can't do it, right? Was it Cloud Village's druid? Then who was it that forced him to this point? Is it Deadale? Many questions suddenly surged in Orochimaru's mind. But soon he suppressed the curiosity in his heart and turned his eyes back to the battlefield where Sasuke and Kimimaro were fighting. No matter how powerful ordinary ninjutsu was, he didn't care much about it. Now, the only things that could affect his mind were various forbidden techniques, immortal techniques, and a Sharingan of the Uchiha clan. Clang, clang, clang. The steel-forged kunai and the bone blades were constantly colliding, and sparks were splashing everywhere, making a sharp and harsh sound of metal colliding. Sasuke and Kimimaro, who were holding the kunai and the bone blades respectively, were like ghosts fighting in the dark forest. Not only were they extremely fast, but their physical techniques were also very excellent. Their moves were fierce and fierce, so even if it was just a pure physical technique competition, it was extremely dangerous. A slight mistake could lead to death. In the fierce battle, the two were extremely focused. Whether it was the strong light that flashed just now or the thunder that constantly echoed in their ears, it didn't disturb them. It was as if they only had eyes for each other at this moment. Not far away from the battlefield, Naruto and Sakura, who were trapped in the magic mirror ice crystal, were looking around at the smooth, mirror-like ice mirrors that covered them. Sakura said with some uncertainty, "Is this the ice release mentioned in the textbooks?" Naruto clenched his fist and said loudly, "No matter what it is, we have to break it as soon as possible. We can't let Sasuke deal with that dangerous guy alone." Sakura nodded repeatedly, yes. At this time, Haku's figure appeared in every ice mirror and said to the trapped Naruto and Sakura, "Please don't worry, I won't hurt you. When things are over, I will immediately let you go." Naruto was puzzled and asked, "Why do you have to target Sasuke?" Naruto had an extraordinary intuition towards malice, so he could feel that the sound ninjas were looking for them not to snatch the scroll in their hand for the Chunin exam, but simply to target Sasuke. Haku was silent for a while, then replied, "I'm sorry. I can't tell you the reason, but you can rest assured that after Kimimaro kills Uchiha and Sasuke, I will immediately let you go. Please don't be impatient." "Are you kidding me? Do you think we will just watch you kill Sasuke? We are companions." Without the slightest hesitation, Naruto shouted and began to form hand seals on Hyejin's side. Even under the heavy rain, the battlefield where the black lightning and purple lightning collided just now was filled with smoke and hot air. Leaning against a half-burnt tree trunk, Hyojin crawled up from the ground. He panted heavily as he looked at the opposite side and said, "That was close." On the opposite side, Darui, who had also just crawled up, looked extremely embarrassed. In the clash between the black lightning and violet lightning, just now, both sides could be considered to have suffered heavy injuries, and neither side had gained any advantage. This result of the battle once again allowed him to confirm that the nature of the opponent's violet lightning was not inferior to his own black lightning. Darui said, "Let's stop here." Although he was also injured, Hyojin, who had just learned purple lightning from Darui's black lightning, was in high spirits, so he said, "All right, surrender, and we will stop here." As expected, after sighing, Darui looked up at the dark clouds in the sky and said, "Kirin, you will regret this." Hyojin also looked up at the dark clouds above his head and said with a light smile, "Do you know why I am called Kirin?" First update, please recommend monthly votes. Chapter 964. Rumble, another bolt of lightning flashed in the dark clouds, illuminating the sky. Standing in the rain, Darui retracted his gaze from the sky and said, "You should know very well that unless I am defeated, I will not admit defeat as the representative of Cloud Village." Hyojin said lightly, "Then let's continue." Darui stared blankly at Hyojin, who was wearing a mask, and furrowed his brows. "What a lunatic! Are you not afraid of death? If we continue, I won't be able to control my strength." Hyojin smiled. Although he was overjoyed by the harvest of the purple lightning, his real purpose of looking for Darui this time was to personally experience the mist release. Whether it was the purple lightning or the mist release, he had already grasped the theory behind them. However, he was still unable to take the last step. If someone could demonstrate it to him, he might be able to understand the secrets of the mist release just like how he mastered the purple lightning. Then, he could instantly overcome the mist release bloodline limit that he had never been able to master and complete the development of the lightning release clone. Time waits for no man. In order to develop the lightning release clone as soon as possible, he was willing to take the risk. At this time, Darui slowly raised his hands and formed a seal as he said coldly, "You shouldn't have chosen to continue fighting me in this weather." During the fight, just now, Darui had actually been intentionally or unintentionally affecting the weather. The scene of thunder and lightning and heavy rain in front of him was completely within his expectations, and the reason why he laid out this plan early, by using the spreading mountain fire and the lightning release ninjutsu to create this thunderstorm weather, is to be prepared for any eventualities. "I didn't expect it to really come in handy." Shaking his head, he chased all the complicated thoughts out of his mind and shouted, "Mist release! Mist ghost dragon!" In an instant, a monster seemed to have appeared in the dark clouds that shrouded the forest of death. It kept stirring the dark clouds, turning them into a whirlpool. Amidst the constantly churning clouds, it would occasionally reveal its lofty appearance. Upon closer inspection, the monster that stirred the dark clouds and spat out lightning was actually a pitch-black giant dragon. Without a doubt, this was Delui's trump card. Combining the black lightning with the mist release, Kuroto used his own chakra as a guide to gradually integrate the lightning formed in the dark clouds into his own mist release ninjutsu. With the help of the power of nature, the power of his ninjutsu increased exponentially. Opposite, Hyojin, who was using Byakugan with all his might, observed the entire process of Druid activating mist escape from a close distance. After that, he seemed to have understood something and started to form a seal. After that, he slowly raised his right hand and pointed at the clouds above his head. With his rich experience in developing Kekkei Genkai, developing mist release should have been a matter of course. However, mist release involved the change in the nature of the thunder attribute chakra. It was the product of the fusion of the thunder attribute chakra and the water attribute chakra. It was very difficult to control, so he had been stuck at this stage. Now that he had mastered the trick of changing the nature of the thunder attribute chakra and had used Byakugan to witness Druid's mist release, he temporarily played the role of a copy ninja and shouted, "Mist release, purple Kirin." After he shouted, His raised right hand flashed with purple lightning. At the same time, a purple light appeared in the churning clouds, as if there was another giant beast stirring in the clouds, competing with the black dragon for the lightning in the dark clouds. Not far away, Asuma, who crawled up from the mud, did not care about his own sorry state. He looked at the restless clouds above his head and shouted at Kakashi, "We can't let them fight anymore. We have to stop them." Clutching her injured left arm, Kurenai also said with fear, "These two guys are too much. If we let them continue, the Death Forest will be finished." Kakashi stared at the clouds in the sky with a serious expression and murmured, "It's too late." As a ninja who is good at lightning release ninjutsu, Kakashi is the one who has the best grasp of the situation among all the Jonin present. If the previous battle between the Cloud Druid and the Mist Kirin was still using their own chakra, then at this moment, they're using the power of nature. In other words, from the very beginning, these two people have been planning for this moment. Kakashi is now very sure that the change in the weather is not inadvertently caused by the two people in the battle, but deliberately. Their purpose is to use the power of nature. Because as long as the power of nature is used, then the power of ninjutsu can be easily increased several times, even dozens of times. This is the same as the mist ninjas who are used to setting their battlefield near the sea or river, and the rock ninjas like to fight in the mountains. Both are using the power of nature, but compared to them, the druid and Kirin in front of him are more skillful and more subtle. And with Kakashi's understanding of lightning release ninjutsu, once the battle has developed to this point, it is not easy to stop. Because the two giant beasts in the cloud are not completely under the control of Kirin and Druid. Kirin and Druid are just using their own chakra as a guide. The nature of the two giant beasts in the cloud is actually a huge lightning formed in the natural world. It is the power of nature. So even if the Druid and Kirin want to stop, this time it is not up to them. "Quick, run." After straightening out this point, Kakashi shouted, "Run." After a pause, Asmus said, "We are so far away, it should be okay, right?" Because they were blown away by the torrent just now. The distance between the Jonin and the battlefield has increased a lot. Now they're a few hundred meters away. So, in Asmus' view, this distance should be safe. After all, according to common sense, the larger the attack range of the lightning release ninjutsu, the smaller the power. Kakashi didn't have time to explain. While pulling Asma out of panic, he shouted, "That is not ninjutsu at all." Out of trust in Kakashi, Guy and Kurenai didn't hesitate and immediately followed, quickly away from the battlefield. On the other side, looking up at the black dragon and purple Kirin in the clouds, Sammy, as Druid's teammate, looked at them incredulously. "It's just a Chunin exam. Is there a need to fight to this point?" On the side, as a perceptual ninja, she shouted, "What are you waiting for, Run?" Sammy immediately reacted and quickly ran away without looking back, because she knew very well that if she was accidentally involved in it, she would be dead. At this time, Dedale didn't care about entangling with Xianglin. He grabbed Kuroto and Akatsuki in one hand and jumped on the clay bird, while cursing, "Unlucky, if I knew it would be so excessive. Why didn't I use C4 to directly clear the battlefield?" At this time, Dedale's eyes trembled because he found that everyone was trying to stay away from the battlefield. Only Xianglin, who had just fought with him, rushed towards the direction of the battlefield regardless of anything. Hey, does she want to die? Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. In addition, thank you to the students who gave gifts yesterday. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 965. Just as Kakashi expected, when Druid and Hyojin began to use their chakra to draw the lightning in the clouds, their mist release could no longer be stopped. And in this process, Druid, who had already mastered the mist release Kekiai limit, naturally had the advantage. His black dragon was wantonly tossing and turning in the clouds, swallowing the lightning in big mouthfuls. Its body also rapidly expanded, and soon, even the layers of clouds could not hide it. In comparison, Hyojin's purple Kirin was obviously inferior to Druid's black dragon, in both size and activity. This was because Hyojin was still a beginner and was not familiar with the mist release. More importantly, it was because he had lost the initiative and allowed Darui to use the mist ghost dragon first. In an instant, more than half of the lightning in the clouds had been seized. Therefore, the purple Qilin that he had used was naturally at a disadvantage in terms of competition. Druid was not happy that his mist release had the upper hand in the clouds. On the contrary, when he saw that Hyojin could also use mist release, he was shocked. One must know that mist release was not only very rare, but it was also the unique Kekii limit of the Cloud Village. So far, except for the ninjas of the Cloud Village, as well as Hiriko and Danzo, who used the Kekii limit fusion ceremony to plunder other people's Kekii limit, there had never been any record of a ninja of other villages using mist release. How is this possible? After a moment of daze, Druid immediately calmed himself down, because he knew very well that now was not the time to explore this, and the other party might not be able to survive the attack of his mist release. No, he would definitely die. Soon, both sides reached their limits, and it seemed that they could no longer hold the two lightning beasts in the clouds. "I'm sorry, Kirin." Druid waved his hand and pointed at Hyojin. A trace of pity flashed in his eyes, as if he was feeling sorry for the fall of a lightning genius. "Hey!" Hyojin chuckled, and his raised right hand suddenly swung down, pointing at Druid opposite him, outside the Forest of Death. Swish, 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 amidst the wind-breaking sounds, the five shadows and Mai's elders flew toward the battlefield in the Forest of Death. Due to the impact of the black lightning and purple lightning, almost half of the surveillance cameras in the Forest of Death were destroyed. Therefore, the five shadows in the surveillance room could not sit still when they saw the snowflakes on the surveillance screens. At this time, the three generations Inoki, who had the best view in the air, suddenly pointed to the distance and shouted, "Look, there is something wrong with the clouds over there." Hearing this, everyone stopped in their tracks and leaped onto the canopy of the big tree, raising their eyes to look into the distance. In the clouds in the distance, two gigantic beasts, one black and one purple, were faintly discernible. They were writhing in the air, and they were accompanied by loud, rumbling noises. Even listening to them from afar, one's heart would still palpitate. Seeing this scene, four generations Laying was the first to react and wondered, "What's going on? How could Druid be so reckless to use this level of ninjutsu in the Chunin exam?" As Laying, although he does not know Black Lightning, nor has he mastered Mist Release, but his familiarity with the Thunder Release Chakra allowed him to understand the situation in the battlefield in the distance at a glance. There is no doubt that this is Druid using the lightning and thunder weather to display the final battle ninjutsu. Three generations Naruto also frowned. How did things develop to this extent? Three generations Naruto asked the doubt in everyone's heart. It is obviously just a Chunin exam. Even if there is a battle of loyalty, it is far from reaching the point of life and death. But the battle in the distance is obviously not a fight. However, everyone has no intention of continuing to approach because they are all experienced ninjas. They know that at this time, not to mention stopping, even getting too close to the battle would be very dangerous. At this moment, the sky suddenly darkened, and all the thunder disappeared in an instant. The whole world seemed to have fallen into an inexplicable silence. Roar, roar. Then, with two roars that sounded like real giant beasts, two giant beasts, one black and one purple, emerged from the layers of clouds. In an instant, a huge light almost illuminated the entire Forest of Death. The five shadows and the group of consulting elders of my subconsciously raised their hands to cover their eyes. Even Itachi, who had the Manjikyu Sharingan to impersonate Hyojin, was no exception. Rumble, after the strong light, a huge roar came. The shock wave mixed with the rain, swept in all directions like a storm. The towering giant trees in the Forest of Death were blown by the storm, and looked from the sky. The whole Forest of Death was like a pond with a stone thrown into it, and the swaying giant trees were like circles of ripples in the pond. In the center of the battlefield, Dark Druid, whose body was emitting green smoke, climbed out of the pit that was 2 meters deep, trembling. Cough, cough. As soon as he climbed out of the ground, Dark Druid knelt on the ground and coughed violently. In terms of the control of the Thunder Release Chakra, he is better than 3 generations Lei-ing and 4 generations Lei-ing. But in terms of physique, he is not as good as the 2 Lei-ing. But even so, his physique is still one of the best in the ninja world, almost only below the Thousand Hands clan, the Uzumaki clan, and the other ninja clans that are born with the immortal body. But even so, in the confrontation just now, where he obviously had the upper hand, a layer of his skin was peeled off, and he almost died. After spitting out a big mouthful of blood, Dark Druid looked at the opposite side. Just like the big pit he just climbed out of, there's also a big pit that was 2 meters deep, emitting green smoke, and that was caused by the attack of his mist ghost dragon. Is it dead? Dark Druid poked his head out and looked. In the confrontation just now, his mist ghost dragon had already defeated the opponent's purple Kirin in midair, so he only suffered the aftermath of the opponent's purple Kirin, but the opponent took a solid hit from his mist ghost dragon. And this kind of decisive battle ninjutsu that uses the power of nature to cast will either miss or die. Seeing that there was no movement in the big pit opposite him, Dark Druid sighed, "What a pity." As soon as Dark Druid's voice fell, a figure climbed out of the big pit opposite him. "Are you talking about me?" Obviously, this person was Hyojin. However, at this moment, Hyojin looked extremely disheveled. Not only had the robe on his body turned into charred shreds, even the custom-made mask on his face had a few cracks, and there were countless wounds on his body. Hearing this, Dark Druid was shocked. How? How is this possible? On the other hand, Hyojin sat on the ground, panting heavily as he smiled with lingering fear. "Hey, I almost lost it." Swoosh. At this time, Xiang Lin, who was also disheveled as if she had been baptized by lightning, landed beside Hyojin. Without saying a word, she rolled up her sleeves and stretched out her fair and tender arms to Hyojin. Third update. Thank you again. Time Passerby, 1996, thanks to the rewards from the Alliance leader of the students, and the reward from the other students. Thank you, everyone. Also, please ask for recommendation votes. It's nothing. Please don't be stingy. Chapter 966. Looking at Suijin's calm demeanor, the shock in Druid's heart was beyond words. The attack just now was the product of the combination of Black Lightning and Mist Release. It was a ninjutsu that had changed the nature of Thunder Chakra and Water Chakra. To some extent, this ninjutsu had surpassed the ordinary Mist Release. Its level should be between Kekiai Limit and Kekiai Elimination. It was a ninjutsu stronger than Kekiai Limit, but slightly weaker than Kekiai Elimination. Therefore, even without the power of nature, this ninjutsu could be classified as an S-class ninjutsu. What's more, the attack just now was fused with the huge thunder and lightning that formed naturally in the clouds and absorbed an immeasurable amount of natural energy in the form of thunder and lightning. Its power was far beyond the scope of ordinary ninjutsu. It could even be regarded as the original version of immortal arts. In Darui's opinion, even the 3 generations Lei-ing, who was known for his defense, would not be able to withstand such a blow, let alone an ordinary ninja. However, this unknown hidden fog Qilin in front of him was able to withstand this blow. This was simply incredible and completely subverted his previous understanding. Not only that, but Xiang Lin, who had arrived at the battlefield first, also surprised Darui. Whether it was from the time she arrived at the battlefield or from Xiang Lin's awkward appearance, he could easily determine that the Mist Ninja was near the battlefield and was directly affected by his blow. But she was not dead. How is this possible? For a moment, Darui was deeply doubtful. On the opposite side, covered in wounds, Hyojin did not waste any time. He gently bit Xiang Lin's white and tender arm and absorbed the Yang release chakra that had a terrifying natural healing ability. In the blink of an eye, the wounds all over his body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In particular, the wound on his back was so deep that the bone could be seen. Amidst the hot steam generated by the intense cell activity, The charred flesh quickly faded, and the cracked bones instantly healed. In just a few breaths, the wound had disappeared, leaving behind only a shallow scar that would not be noticed if one did not look carefully. Phew! Feeling that he had almost recovered, Hyojin loosened his bite and breathed a sigh of relief. Xiang Lin, on the other hand, retracted his arm with a red face and put down his sleeve. In the sleeve, the Type 3 biological armor that automatically split open closed again and wrapped around Xiang Lin's arm. At this time, Hyojin got up and moved his body, then took out a storage scroll from the broken ninja bag and took out a new set of clothes and a mask from the storage scroll. Just now, Hyojin really almost lost, because his understanding of lightning release ninjutsu is not deep enough. He misjudged the characteristics of lightning release ninjutsu. He thought that even if his hasty purple Kirin can't compete with Druid's Haze Ogre Dragon, it can at least offset most of the power of Haze Ogre Dragon. But he did not expect that in the contest of thunder and lightning, the winner would not lose much. He did not expect that the Kirin would be able to absorb the energy of the loser, the power of the mist of the loser. Sensing that something was wrong, he instinctively used the power of the giant Tenseigan to absorb the mist of the dragon. However, the mist release, ninjutsu launched by Druid, contains a huge amount of natural energy. Although it is not launched by pure Senjutsu chakra, but this ninjutsu itself still has some characteristics of Senjutsu. So even if the giant Tenseigan absorbs it, it can't completely offset the mist evil dragon. Of course, it was also thanks to the giant Tenseigan absorbing part of the power of the mist of the dragon at the critical moment that Hyojin was lucky enough to keep the thunder release clone. In fact, even if he could not keep the clone in the end, he would not regret his decision to take the risk. Because if he could exchange a thunder release clone for a chance to experience the mist release bloodline limit, it was not a bad deal for him. Anyway, Kakashi's cells were inexhaustible, so he was not worried at all. In the distance, Kakashi, who was observing the battlefield, sneezed for no reason. Whoosh whoosh. At this time, she and Sammy, who were in the same team as Druid, finally arrived at the battlefield. Both of them were taken aback by the sight of the devastated battlefield and Druid, who was so badly injured that he could barely move. What surprised them even more was that Kirin from the Hidden Mist sect looked as if nothing had happened. Even his clothes were brand new. It did not look like he had just gone through a fierce battle. He defeated Druid? Obviously, they were late and did not know about Hyojin's previous miserable state. They thought that Hyojin, who had just changed into a new set of clothes, easily defeated Druid. Suijin walked towards the direction of the Druid. Although they were frightened, she and Sammy still stood in front of Druid to protect him. Hyojin stopped and smiled. "You're not bad to let me have such a good time. Let's call this a draw." At the edge of the forest of death, looking at the gradually dissipating dark clouds in the distance, feeling the obviously lighter rain around them, the 5 Kage, standing on the top of the tree, had different expressions. There is no doubt that the battle in the distance was a classic battle of ninjas using nature. In the final battle, both sides had used up almost all the thunder and lightning in the rain clouds. After the final splendid discharge, the naturally formed wind, rain, and thunder were all exhausted. The power of nature had been used to the extreme. Even if they were just watching from afar, the people present were strongly shocked by the last blow just now. They almost reached the peak of ninjutsu. 4 generations of Kazekage muttered to himself. 3 generations of Tsuchikage, who had always been proud, could not help but echo. The younger generation will surpass the older. 3 generations of Naruto asked 4 generations Lei Ing and 4 generations of Mizukage with a serious face. "Shouldn't the 2 of you give our Mai an explanation? Why did such a dangerous ninjutsu appear in the Chunin exam?" 4 generations Lei Ing and 4 generations of Mizukage looked at each other and were speechless. Bang! At this moment, a huge white smoke suddenly exploded at the other end of the forest of death. Following that, an incomparably huge toad sprang out of the white smoke and spat out a mouthful of oily substance. The ninja standing on the toad quickly made a seal and used fire release to ignite the oily substance. In an instant, half of the sky was reflected red by the huge flame. Similarly, Naruto, 3 generations, who was questioning 4 generations Lei Ing and 4 generations of Mizukage, looked at the fire oil compound ninjutsu and could not help but blush. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 9, 67. Damn it, damn it, damn it. In front of the flames, Sasuke's face was full of shame and annoyance. He thought that after the past few years of growth and awakening the 3 Tomo Sharingan, he had completely surpassed Kimimaro, surpassing the opponent who once humiliated him. But after fighting, he was shocked to find that whether it was speed, strength, or basic taijutsu skills, Kuroto was above him. How is this possible? He is just a ninja from a small village. How can he be stronger than me, who came from the Uchiha clan? I am the genius of the Uchiha clan, the #1 in the ninja school. I will never admit it. Unwillingness and anger intertwined with each other, constantly washing away at Sasuke's soul. Sasuke, who was trying to wash away his shame, even began to doubt whether everything in front of him was real. At this time, blood flowed down Sasuke's cheek from the wound caused by Kimimaro's bone blade and flowed down his cheek to the corner of his mouth. Tasting his own blood, Sasuke glanced at the wound on his cheek and muttered, "Damn it, it's true. This guy is stronger than me." Cheek, left arm, ribs, back, right leg, the 11 wounds on his body clearly reminded him that in the taijutsu contest with Kimimaro, he was defeated by him with the 3 Sharingan. Moreover, it was a complete and embarrassing defeat. If he didn't use the summoning technique to summon the Toad runes, his neck would have been cut off by Kimimaro's bone blade. Bunta the Toad, that was leaping in the air, landed on the ground at this time. Amidst the earth-shaking rumbling, it asked in a muffled voice, "Hey Sasuke, what trouble have you encountered? Why do you want me to use a ninjutsu like Toad Oil Bomb?" Sasuke said, "I'm sorry, this time the enemy is very strong." Bunta looked as if he was facing a formidable enemy, and his hand reached for the dagger on his waist. "So, it's the Akatsuki again?" Sasuke shook his head. "No, it's the Chunin exam." Looking at the fiery red sky in the distance, Hyojin curled his lips. "It's starting over there." Bunta's huge figure in the air couldn't hide from Hyojin, so with just a glance, he knew that Sasuke must be in a tough fight. Knowing that Orochimaru is likely to covet Sasuke's Sharingan, Kuroto, who has already completed the development of Mist Release, decided to rush over to take a look. If Orochimaru can stimulate Sasuke to awaken his Manjikyu Sharingan, then that would naturally be the best, saving him a lot of trouble. But if Sasuke fails to live up to expectations and is captured by Orochimaru, or if Orochimaru takes away his Sharingan, then he will be forced to take action. Thinking of this, Suijin said to the 3 Kyumo shinobi, "Everyone farewell." After that, his figure flickered, and he flew towards Sasuke. Xianglin didn't say much, and quickly followed Hyojin. Phew! Seeing Hyojin and Xianglin leave, she and Samui breathed a long sigh of relief. They didn't expect that the mist ninjas, who they had never put in their eyes before, could give them so much pressure. On Hyojin's side, as soon as he left the battlefield, he met Shuizuki, who was rushing over. Shuizuki had been hiding far away, and now that the battle had subsided, she hurried over. After the 3 met, it didn't take long for them to meet a team of Mai's Genin. All the members of this team were unconscious on the ground. Obviously, because they were too close, they were affected by the aftermath of the battle between Hyojin and Druid. After checking and seeing that the 3 of them were not in danger, Hyojin just took the scrolls from them and didn't stay any longer. Due to the battle between him and Darui being too eye-catching, it had attracted the attention of many nearby teams. However, not all teams were aware of their own limitations. Some teams didn't evacuate in time because they wanted to take advantage of the situation, and when they found that the situation was not right, it was too late to retreat to a safe range. Therefore, there was definitely more than one team that was inexplicably wiped out by the aftermath of the battle. As long as Hyojin was willing to take a look, there would definitely be some gains. Toad Bunna, looking at the huge toad in the distance. Orochimaru seemed to recall something. He was lost for a moment, and then he grinned and said with a smile, "The rumors are true." He had always scoffed at the news of Jiraiya accepting Sasuke as a disciple. In his opinion, as the backbone of Naruto's faction, Jiraiya would never accept Uchiha as a disciple, especially when the 3 generations old men were still alive. But now that he saw Sasuke communicating with the Toad Bunta of Mount Maiboku, he was convinced that Jiraiya really accepted Uchiha as a disciple and even passed down the inheritance of Mount Maiboku. Jiraiya has always had a good eye for disciples. Nagato is the leader of Akatsuki, and Naruto is the village's 4 generations old men. This time he accepted Sasuke as a disciple. I'm afraid he also took a fancy to Sasuke's talent. Thinking of this, Orochimaru's competitive spirit rose again, and he said, "My disciple is not bad either. Although he didn't reach the level of the Akatsuki leader, at least he became the 5th Naruto. As for the Sasuke, why don't I snatch him from Jiraiya's hands? Under my guidance, his achievements will definitely far surpass those Uchiha in the village." In Orochimaru's mind, he wanted to kidnap Sasuke first, and as for how to deal with him later, it was all up to him. Crack, crack! After using Rasengan to shatter another ice mirror, Naruto found that there was another layer of ice mirror on the outside, and the ice mirror that he had just shattered was restored to its original state after a while. At this time, Haku in the ice mirror said, "It's useless. Give up." Although he did not know why there was suddenly lightning and thunder on a sunny day, and the wind and rain mixed together, it was obvious that Haku had the upper hand in the battle in the rain, and the consumption of chakra to maintain the magic mirror ice crystal was reduced by almost 50%. Through the violent shaking of the ground and the fire that reflected the whole sky red, Sakura guessed that Sasuke was likely to be psychic out of Bunta the Toad, so she said, "Naruto, Sasuke must be in a difficult battle." Naruto nodded. "Yes, I understand." After saying that, he bit his finger, quickly formed a seal, and pressed it on the ground. Psychic art. Bang! In an instant, a huge burst of white smoke exploded, and at the same time, in the continuous crack sound, countless ice mirrors were suddenly crushed by the huge creature that suddenly appeared in the white smoke. Haku immediately jumped out of the broken ice mirror and looked at the big red snake in the broken ice fog with some surprise. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped yesterday. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 968. Exanya stuck out his long tongue, looked left and right in the cold mist with his huge golden eyes, and said in a muffled voice, "Naruto, don't summon me in such a cold place." Even the great snake Shinya, who could control the energy of nature, hated the cold, just like ordinary snakes. And at this moment, because a large number of ice mirrors had been crushed by Exanya's enormous body, the shattered ice shards combined with the mist in the air, forming a dense cold mist in the surroundings, causing the temperature to suddenly drop by a lot. Standing on top of Exanya's head, Naruto said anxiously, "I'm sorry. The enemy is too strong. I can only rely on you." "Where's the enemy?" Exanya looked around and complained. "Haven't you always been in my village? Why are you in this damn place?" Naruto replied, "This is my village." Exanya was surprised. "This is my village?" Sakura, who was standing on top of Exanya's head with Naruto, said, "Exanya-sama, the enemy this time is a ninja who can use ice release ninjutsu." Exanya, who had quickly adapted to the environment, reacted and said, "Humph, so it's ice release ninjutsu." At this time, an ice mirror floated in front of Exanya. Haku's figure appeared in the ice mirror, and she said, "There is no need for us to fight." Naruto asked, "If your partner is in danger, will you just stand by and watch?" In the ice mirror, Haku was obviously startled and immediately shook her head. "No." Naruto shouted, "We don't know how to do that either. Get out of the way. Don't block the way." Haku also said firmly, I understand your resolve, but I can't let you disturb Kimimaro. So no matter what, please stay here for the time being. Exaiania snorted, Humph, you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do you think you can stop me? Pah! With that, it whipped its tail violently, instantly shattering the ice mirror floating in front of it. However, as the ice mirrors shattered, brand new ice mirrors appeared out of thin air. Layers upon layers of ice enveloped Exaiania. From afar, it was as if a giant ice shield had appeared in the cold mist. Crack! Crack! Under the extreme cold, even though Exaiania's movements became a little slower, his body was just too big. Every move he made was earth-shattering. In front of a monster like him, the sturdy ice crystals were as fragile as glass. With just a normal collision, with a series of crisp sounds, he smashed through 3 or 4 ice walls that were made up of countless ice mirrors in front of him. Sigh. Seeing that Exaiania was about to carry Naruto, and Sakura had broken through her obstruction, Bai could only sigh softly. Soon after, he extended his right hand towards Exaiania, who was pouncing towards him. His 5 fingers slowly closed and clenched into a fist. At the same time, an ice crystal-like mark appeared on his eyebrows, and strange lines appeared on his eyes, and a majestic chakra gushed out of his body. In a split second, a layer of frost appeared on Exaiania's scales. This frost rapidly expanded, like a blossoming flower, turning into sharp ice crystals that continued to spread. In the blink of an eye, the giant Exaiania was completely swallowed by these ice crystals, turning into a giant ice sculpture within the cold fog. Needless to say, Bai had finally used the trump card that he had been hiding. Bai's physique was very special. This was something that Hyojin knew the best. Back when Hyojin was developing the water clone, it was because Bai's cell fusion ability was too good that the cloning process was unusually smooth. This caused him to think that his cell fusion technique was very strong. It was only until he developed the fire clone that he realized that it was not his technique that was strong, but Bai's cell fusion ability was too strong. Naturally, Orochimaru quickly realized this and injected the Heaven Curse Seal into Bai's body. It must be known that not everyone could withstand the Heaven Curse Seal. Among Orochimaru's test subjects, the percentage that could withstand the Heaven Curse Seal was very low. Countless test subjects exploded and died when they tried to inject the Heaven Curse Seal. Even someone as strong as Kimimaro, who had the bone vein, had no choice but to inject the Earth Curse Seal into his body. From this, it could be seen that Bai's cells had an extraordinary ability to fuse with natural energy. Ever since he obtained the Heaven Curse Seal, Bai had come into contact with natural energy and learned how to absorb and use natural energy. During this process, Haku didn't show any abnormalities until the resurrected Orochimaru extracted the Curse of Heaven that was injected into Haku's body in order to recover his own power. Haku suddenly discovered that without the Curse of Heaven, without the interference of Orochimaru's chakra, his absorption of nature's chakra became faster and smoother. At this time, he suddenly realized that after he learned how to absorb natural energy, Orochimaru's chakra in the Heaven Curse Seal became a hindrance to his control of natural energy. In other words, the entire Heaven Curse Seal became a hindrance to his control of natural energy. Yugo's chakra was no exception. Without the interference of the Heaven Curse Seal, it was much easier for him to absorb and use the nature energy. When he tried out in private, he discovered that he could instantly enter a higher level immortal mode than sigil mode, just like the perfect immortal medicine bag. Moreover, it was an immortal mode that was different from Ryuchi Cave and Juwu. It was an immortal mode that belonged to him. After discovering this, Haku chose to hide it in fear. This was because he knew that the strong were respected in the Sound Village. Once the fact that he could enter the Sage mode was exposed, no matter what his attitude was, his existence would have a huge impact on Kimimaro's position as the leader of the Four Sound Ninjas. Haku, who was aloof from worldly affairs, was happy to accept Kimimaro's command. He didn't want to challenge Kimimaro's position as the leader. However, Kuroda didn't know that Orochimaru, who is living in the body of the perfect sage, has long been faintly aware of this. This time, arranging for him to come to Konoha is also Orochimaru's intention. Therefore, this time, Orochimaru's test target wasn't just Sasuke. It also included Kimimaro and Haku. While Orochimaru wanted to know how much Sasuke had grown, he also wanted to know where Kimimaro's limit was. He also wanted to know what Haku was hiding from him. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 969. The thick cold fog not only blocked the light, but it also blocked the sounds of the outside world. Amidst the floating ice shards, the world seemed to have fallen into a dead silence. Haku peeked out from an ice mirror floating in the air and looked at the giant red snake that had been frozen into an ice sculpture. He thought to himself, such a powerful spiritual beast, a short period of time shouldn't be enough to kill it, right? In his opinion, Kimimaro wouldn't take too long. After all, it was Kimimaro. Once Kimimaro killed Uchiha and Sasuke, completing Orochimaru Sama's order, he could remove his ninjutsu and release the giant red snake, Naruto, and Sakura. Kacha! At this moment, a crack suddenly appeared on the ice crystal that had frozen Exainya. Haku's expression changed. Ow! Bang! Before Haku could react, there was a deafening sound, and the ice sculpture shattered into countless shards. Exainya, who had been frozen inside, struggled to break free. At the same time, Haku was shocked to find that Naruto had already transformed into a tailed beast on top of Exainya's head. His body was covered in an orange-red tailed beast coat, and his body was emitting a terrifying aura. What a shocking chakra! After being stunned for a while, Haku immediately reacted. He waved his hands and activated the ice release ninjutsu again. In an instant, ice crystals rushed towards Exainya from all directions. Swoosh! Exainya immediately coiled his body and spun on the spot, using his hard scales to block the attack of the ice crystals. Naruto, who was on top of Exainya's head, suddenly grabbed forward. The orange-red tailed beast coat immediately extended a giant chakra claw, and it slashed towards Haku. Boom! The giant chakra claw collided with the ice crystals, and there was an earth-shattering sound. Haku's ice release was a bloodline limit, and with the addition of the immortal technique chakra, its power was terrifying. Naruto had also entered Sage mode with Exainya's help. After transforming into a tailed beast, the giant tail beast chakra provided by the 9 tails, and the power of his angry attack was extraordinary. In the battle, the giant tail beast chakra claw gradually gained the upper hand. With the help of the QB, Naruto's chakra volume is among the best in the shinobi world. Perhaps only Suijin with the help of the Tenseigan and the Dragon Vein, as well as Nagato with the help of the external path demon statue, are above him. Therefore, in the stalemate, the white ice crystal was gradually defeated by the chakra giant claw and shattered. Seeing this, Haku's heart skipped a beat. Rumble, suddenly the earth trembled. Following that, sharp bone spears pierced through the ground one after another, rising from the ground and forming a large bone forest in an instant. The sudden change interrupted the battle between Haku and Naruto, causing them to look at the center of the bone forest at the same time in the distance. The giant toad spirit beast, the fire oil compound ninjutsu that reflected the entire sky, and the giant red snake that was frozen into an ice sculpture in the cold fog. The scene in front of them stunned the Jonin in charge of invigilating the exam. They thought that the battle between the Kirin and the Cloud Druid was already exaggerated enough, and there wouldn't be any more battles like this in the rest of the exam. However, they didn't expect that as soon as the battle ended, a terrifying battle broke out on the other side of the Forest of Death. Standing on the tree crown, Mute asked with uncertainty, "That giant toad is Mount Miyaboku's Toad Sensei, right? The frozen one is Ryuchi Cave's Shinya Orochi?" Kakashi nodded. He was no stranger to the 2 giant spirit beasts of Sasuke and Naruto, but he couldn't figure out who could force Sasuke and Naruto to this point. Red was also very curious. Who were they fighting with? Although there are many hidden dragons and crouching tigers in this Chunin exam, except for Kirin of the Mist Village and Druid of the Cloud Village, as well as Deadale of the Rock Village who appeared near the battlefield, it stands to reason that no one can force Naruto and Sasuke to this point. Swish, at this time, an Umbu landed in front of several invigilators and reported, "It has been verified that the ones who fought with Uchiha, Sasuke, and Uzumaki Naruto were ninja of sound, Kimimaro, and Haku." Ninja of sound? Asuma was taken aback. In his impression, the Sound Village is just a small shinobi village that was established not long ago. It doesn't have any fame, nor does it have any military achievements. The only thing worth paying attention to is that the Sound Village has gathered a group of Kekai Genkai ninjas who fled to the Mist Village during the turmoil. For example, Kimimaro and Haku, who were mentioned by the Umbu, were both members of the Mist clan. It's just that such simple information obviously can't be connected to the terrifying battle in the distance. It must be known that Sasuke Naruto, who summoned Bunta the Toad and Orochi Senya, isn't someone that anyone can deal with. And from the battle in the distance, Sasuke and Naruto seemed to be at a disadvantage. Miyute held his forehead with his hand and sighed. "Fortunately, we didn't go through this Chunin exam." All the Jonins present nodded in agreement, and the expressions on their faces revealed a hint of relief. Suddenly, the earth trembled, and sharp-boned spears rose from the ground in the distance. In the blink of an eye, a white bone forest was formed in the dense forest of death. Looking at the familiar bone forest in front of her, Kurenai blurted out, "Wind chime." Kakashi shook his head. "No, it's Kimimaro of the Sound Village." Looking at the white bone forest that had suddenly pierced through the ground and replaced the green forest, as well as the toad Bunta, who was trapped in the bone forest, Ino shouted anxiously, "Shikamaru, Sasuke, and the others must have encountered some big trouble. We should go and help them." As soon as Ino's voice fell, all the students around him looked at Shikamaru. Facing everyone's gaze, Shikamaru shook his head and said bitterly, "This kind of battle, we can't intervene at all. If we go, we will only cause trouble for Sasuke and the others." Hinata, who was worried about Naruto, hurriedly asked, "Then what should we do?" After thinking for a moment, Shikamaru said dispiritedly, "Just give up. If we continue this Chunin exam, we may not even be able to keep our lives." On the other side of the forest, when he saw the figure of Fumida and Orochi in the distance, Ningxi fell into hesitation. The Sandcrypsis team he encountered was very strong, and among them, the guy called Ziluo was also a physical master and could even fight evenly with Xiaoli, who had opened the fourth gate of the 8 inner hidden gates, which greatly exceeded his expectations. Hanju, who was good at wind release, and Kankuro, who was good at puppetry, were also not easy to deal with. But in the distance, Sasuke and Naruto were obviously in a difficult battle, and among the students, only he had the ability to intervene in the battle. As if seeing Ningxi's dilemma, Tian said, "Ningxi, don't worry about us. You go quickly." Ningxi said, "But you—" Tian interrupted Ningxi and smiled. "Don't look down on me. I'm second in the same batch, okay? Leave these few Sandcrypsis ninjas to me and Xiaoli. We can handle it." Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped yesterday. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 970. The White Bone Forest was like a black hole, attracting everyone's attention. In the middle of the bone forest, Bunta the Toad was swinging its dagger rapidly, while dodging the sharp bone spears that were piercing out of the ground with a dexterity that did not match its size. Clang, clang, clang. Bunta's slashes were fierce and swift, and the bone spears were constantly being cut off. But even so, Bunta's slashes could barely resist the bone spears that were coming from all directions. Because these bone spears were endless, even if they were cut off, they could quickly recover. So in just a moment, there were many scratches on Bunta's body, and blood was flowing out. And as the slashes continued, Bunta's arm that was holding the sword began to tremble slightly. Although its body was big, it was actually a summoning beast that focused on techniques. Although its swordsmanship was fierce, its endurance was not its strong point. Sasuke immediately noticed this, and he knew that Bunta wouldn't be able to hold on for long. So he used his Samigamoto Sharingan to look at the bone forest in front of him. For him, the only way to win was to find Kimimura's main body in the bone forest before Bunta's physical strength was exhausted. Soon, Sasuke found something and pointed in a direction. Found it. Bunta nodded, then suddenly waved his sword, cutting off the bone spears that were coming at him, then jumped into the air and spat toad oil in the direction where Sasuke pointed. At the same time, Sasuke, who was standing on top of Bunta's head, quickly made hand seals, fire release, dragon fire technique. Under the guidance of Sasuke's dragon fire technique, the flame of the toad oil flame bomb instantly engulfed a large area of the bone forest, and the sky above the death forest was once again illuminated red. After landing, Bunta glanced at Exainia, who was covered in cold mist in the distance, and said with disdain, "Humph, even Ice Release can't deal with this guy from Ryuchi Cave. He's really useless." "Did you succeed?" Staring at the bone forest that was engulfed by the toad oil flame bomb, Sasuke's face lit up with joy. This was because he had keenly discovered that after the toad oil flame bomb had burned the entire bone forest, the growth and expansion of the entire bone forest seemed to have stopped. At this moment, a huge bone spear extended from the blazing flames. Then, a figure slowly emerged from the tip of the bone spear. Seeing this, Sasuke and Bunta the Toad were quite surprised. The thing that came out of the flames was a grayish-brown monster with a long tail. From its appearance, it wasn't hard to tell that it was Kimimaro. "Sasuke, the chakra on his body is very strange. It gives me a familiar feeling." After a pause, Toad Bunta complained again. "Are you sure this is really just a Chunin exam?" Sasuke nodded and said, "Yes, he is a student from the Sound Ninja Village. His name is Kimimaro." Kimimaro, who was standing on top of the bone spear, looked at Sasuke, who was standing on top of Bunta the Toad's head, and said calmly, "Uchiha Sasuke, you are indeed different from the other trash." Sasuke's face darkened. "How dare you look down on me like this?" Ignoring Sasuke's anger, Kimimaro said, "It's worth my effort." After saying that, the chakra on Kimimaro's body increased again, and the evil chakra of the curse of the earth spread out from his body, forming a cyclone around him. Sasuke's face was a bit embarrassed. The chakra's amount that Kimimaro had used was far beyond his imagination, and it made him instinctively feel uneasy. Cough, cough. Suddenly, Kimimaro coughed without any warning, and the more he coughed, the faster it became. In the end, he even coughed out big mouthfuls of blood. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. He's injured? Even if he's injured, it should be an external wound. Why is he coughing out blood? Is there something wrong with his body? Bunta the Toad also said, "Something's wrong. His chakra is weakening, but his aura seems to be stronger than before." Obviously, Kimimaro's blood inheritance disease was acting up. The source of this blood inheritance disease was the mutual kill gray bones hidden in the bone meridian. Therefore, while the blood inheritance disease was destroying Kimimaro's body, it was also strengthening his bone meridian. Sasuke frowned and said, "Kimimaro, since there's something wrong with your body, why don't we stop this competition? Our Uchiha won't take advantage of you like this." In recent years, Kimimaro could clearly feel that his body was getting worse, and he said with determination, "I don't have much time left. Before I die, I must complete the task given by the Lord." Swoosh! After saying that, his body flashed, and he suddenly pounced toward Sasuke. Task! Sasuke, who was confused, quickly took out his kunai and prepared to attack Kimimaro. Bang! At this moment, a figure flew over from the side and directly hit Kimimaro, who was pouncing toward Sasuke. Then, both of them fell into the bone forest. Naruto! Sasuke was shocked, because the person who intercepted Kimimaro in the air was none other than Naruto, who was wearing a tailed beast coat. Rumble, then, with a tremor, The huge Xin also rushed over from the bone forest. On top of Xinya's head, Sakura shouted with concern, "Sasuke, are you all right?" Sasuke was a little unhappy. "What are you doing here?" Sakura quickly said, "We're here to help." "Help me?" After pausing for a while, Sasuke said arrogantly, "In a one-on-one fight, our Uchiha doesn't need help." Xinya sized up the wounded toad from head to toe. "Heh, are the toads of Mount Miaomu only at this level? They can't even deal with the bone vein?" Toad immediately sneered. "Is that ice sculpture a traditional skill of the Ryuchi cave?" While Xinya and Toad were bickering, many ice mirrors flew across the sky and arrived above the bone forest. In the bone forest, Kimimaro, who had entered the second form of the seal, was fighting with Naruto, who had activated his Sage mode and transformed into a tailed beast. At this time, both of them were monsters, and every move they made contained great power. Even the sturdy bone spears couldn't escape from the aftermath of their fight. Seeing that Kimimaro was stalled by Naruto, Haku in the ice mirror didn't hesitate anymore. He knew that Kimimaro's body wouldn't last long, so he immediately made a hand seal. Ice release, ice rain. In an instant, the mist in the air condensed into many crystal clear ice spears, pointing at Toad and Sasuke, who was on top of Toad's head. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 971. Swish, swish, swish. Huge ice spears fell from the sky like raindrops. At the same time, crystal-clear ice flowers bloomed on the ground. Under the pincer attack of the ice spears in the sky and the ice flowers on the ground, even if the toad was agile, it couldn't help but be flustered. Many parts of its body were infected by the frost, and its back was even hit by an ice spear. "Damn it, you dare to provoke me." Sasuke was furious. Being suppressed by Kimimaro already made him angry out of shame, but this ninja from the Sound Village dared to face him alone. This made it difficult for him to endure. "How can we, the Uchiha clan's glory, be trampled by you sound ninjas again and again?" Sasuke roared with a distorted expression and quickly formed a hand seal. Fire release, grand fire annihilation. Disregarding the consumption of chakra, he released the strongest fire release ninjutsu he had ever used. A huge flame rushed out of his mouth like a sea of fire, instantly engulfing the ice mirror that Haku was hiding in. Looking at the ice mirror that was engulfed by the flame, Sasuke sneered. "This is the result of going against me." However, after the flame retreated, the ice mirror that was engulfed was still floating in the air. Although it seemed to have melted a little, it was only a little. Sasuke was surprised. How is this possible? The grand fire annihilation just now consumed half of his chakra. Not to mention an ice mirror. Even an ice lake should have been melted by the flame. At this time, Bunta, who was covered in frost, said, "Sasuke, this is not an ordinary ice release. This is an ice release activated by the immortal technique chakra. The opponent has mastered the immortal technique." Immortal technique? The surprise in Sasuke's eyes became even more intense, because Senjutsu is a consummate technique that even he, as an Uchiha genius, couldn't master. Feeling the numbness caused by the freezing of her limbs, the toad once again complained, "Are you sure these two shinobi are really just genin?" On the other side, the bone spears in the bone forest grew once again, piercing towards Xinya. Xinya originally thought that with the hardness of his scales, it wouldn't be a problem for him to block these bone spears. But he quickly discovered that the sharpness of these bone spears was far beyond his imagination. The scales on his abdomen only managed to block for a moment before obvious cracks appeared. If he was pierced again, it would be difficult for him to escape the misfortune of being pierced through. What the hell? How can this kid's bone vein be so strong? As the summoned beast of the Sand Shinobi, Xinya has fought against the Mist Shinobi many times, so naturally, he is no stranger to the corpse bone vein of the Mist. Shinya was a genius of the Kagaya clan, and he didn't use any secret potions or blood transfusion, so the bone vein in his body wasn't a weak version of the Kagaya clans. First, Kimimaro was a genius of the Kagaya clan, and he didn't use any secret potions or blood transfusion. So, the bone vein in his body wasn't the weakened version that was commonly seen in the Kagaya clan. Second, Kimimaro was in the cursed state, which was close to the sage mode. So, his bone vein was strengthened by the nature chakra, and its power was greatly enhanced. After realizing that something was wrong, Shinya didn't dare to recklessly resist the bone spears. He could only carefully move through the bone forest to provide assistance and cover for Naruto. In the distance, Yugo's expression darkened when he saw that the battle had fallen into a stalemate. He immediately decided to join the battle after sending the injured Jojo, Okumru, and Duo Yuya to the medical station. But just as Yugo was about to activate the curse seal, someone pressed his shoulder from behind. Who? Yugo was startled. He immediately turned around and found that the person who quietly approached him was a Kusanagi ninja. The other party smiled and said, "Don't interfere." Yugo was startled and asked, Orochimaru-sama? The other party nodded. Without a doubt, the person who stopped Yugo from joining the battle was none other than Orochimaru, who had been watching the battle. Yugo quickly bowed to Orochimaru respectfully and asked, "Orochimaru-sama, didn't you want us to kill Uchiha Sasuke? Why don't you let me interfere?" Orochimaru smiled evilly. "This is a test." Yugo immediately understood that Orochimaru didn't really want to kill Uchiha Sasuke, but he wanted to use Kimimaro and Haku to test Uchiha Sasuke's ability. Or maybe he also wanted to test Kimimaro and Haku. On the other side, swoosh, 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 with the sound of the wind breaking, Hyojin led Xiang Lin and Mizukage to the edge of the battlefield. Standing on the crown of a big tree, Hyojin, who had activated the Byakugan, carefully observed the battlefield. After a while, the corners of his mouth under the mask unconsciously rose. Naruto had successfully entered the tailed beast state. Although he was only wearing an ordinary tailed beast coat, and it wasn't the golden chakra mode unique to the nine tails, and he only revealed 3 tails from his behavior and the sage mode, Aishidao, and horizontal pupils. It was obvious that Naruto retained his own consciousness. It was a normal tailed beast state, not a berserk state. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Naruto to maintain the sage mode in the berserk state. This point alone showed that Hyojin's talk with the 9 tails in Naruto's mind last time was very effective. Naruto's potential is unimaginable. He can even block Kimimaro's attack with his runes activated. Hyojin sighed in his heart while observing. At this time, Naruto hadn't mastered the 9 tails chakra mode, and he couldn't fuse the sage chakra with the chakra mode. Whether it was the sage technique or the use of the tailed beast state, he was incomparably clumsy. Even so, he was barely able to resist Kimimaro's runes. Just think about it. Above Naruto's current state, there was the 9 tails chakra mode, as well as the 9 Lama mode, which was stronger than the 9 tails chakra mode. And above the 9 Lama mode, there was the perfect fusion of the sage technique and the tailed beast state, the cross-shaped pupil golden celestial fox mode. It can be said that as long as Naruto practiced step by step, even without the gift from the Sage of the Six Paths, he would be able to reach the strongest realm under the Six Paths. Compared to Naruto, Sasuke's performance was a bit worse. Not to mention his body was full of scars, and he looked tired. There was no sign of him awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan. Rubbing his chin, Hyojin thought to himself, "Hey, it seems that the stimulation wasn't enough." The second update is here, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, I would like to thank the students who tipped me yesterday. Thank you all. Chapter 972. Hey, when did Haku become so strong? While observing Sasuke, Hyojin found that Haku was able to suppress Sasuke and Bunta-toad by himself. If it wasn't for Haku's hesitation and lack of decisiveness, Sasuke's situation would have been even worse. But stands to reason that Sasuke and Bunta-toad, who could perform fire oil compound ninjutsu, shouldn't be afraid of Haku's ice release, let alone being suppressed by Haku alone. So Hyojin immediately turned his gaze to Haku, who was shuttling through the ice mirrors. Soon, Hyojin found that Haku's body was brimming with a very strong natural energy. Not only that, but Haku's face also had a strange eyeshadow similar to Sage Mode. Sage Arts. Hyojin, who discovered this, was startled. He knew very well that Haku would definitely be stronger under Orochimaru than under Zabuza in the original world, but he didn't expect Haku to be able to master Sage Arts. Moreover, the area of Haku's face was very small, unlike Jiraiya's body in Sage Mode, where his body would turn into a frog on a large scale. In Sage Mode, the more obvious the body's mutation was, the stronger the body's rejection of natural energy. On the contrary, if the body's mutation was very weak, it meant that the body's ability to control natural energy was very strong. In this regard, Hashiraya was the best example. Not only could he instantly enter Sage Mode without any preparation, but after entering Sage Mode, his body's mutation was only the eyeshadow on his face. Could it be that Orochimaru has made some progress in Sage Arts? Thinking of how Orochimaru created a group of androids with his own cells in the original space-time that were born with the ability to absorb natural energy and could enter a special Sage Mode, Kuroto couldn't help but have various speculations. After all, he had never underestimated Orochimaru's research and development capabilities. Right at this moment, another crystal clear ice flower exploded on the ground in the distance. Large amounts of ice crystals seemed to be alive, growing crazily along with a series of cracking noise. The ice crystals immediately froze the left leg of the toad, restricting its movements. Then 1,000 ice scrolls suddenly formed in the air and pointed at Sasuke, who was on the toad. Oh! Panting, Sasuke's face froze when he saw this scene, and a trace of panic flashed in his eyes. After fighting Onikimu, Kimimaro, and other strong enemies, not only did Kuroto consume most of his chakra, but his body was also covered with large and small scars. After releasing the Grand Flame Annihilation just now, both his physical strength and willpower were almost at their limits. Facing the sky full of ice that was as dense as raindrops, he, who was aching all over, had no way of dodging. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Soon, countless ice scrolls in the sky shot toward Sasuke with a sharp whistling sound. Oh no! Although the 3 Magatama on the Sharingan in his eye sockets were spinning, Sasuke's hands that were holding the kunai trembled slightly, because he knew very well that even if he had 3 Magatama Sharingan, it would be impossible for him to avoid so many ice scrolls. Suddenly, a figure flashed in front of Sasuke and shouted, 8 trigram palm. Revolving heaven. Ding, ding, dong, dong. In an instant, all the ice scrolls that were shooting towards Sasuke were blocked by the sudden appearance of the blue chakra cyclone. Ningxi, why are you here? Sasuke's face was a little gloomy. As the first in his batch, he was saved by his peers several times today, which made him feel a little embarrassed. Needless to say, the person who had just helped Sasuke block countless Ice Thousand coins was none other than Niji, who had rushed over here in a hurry. Ningxi didn't look back. He just looked at the ice mirror floating in the air and replied, I saw that you and Naruto both use psychic jutsu, so I guess that you might be in trouble, so I came take a look. Sasuke said in a deep voice, Be careful. The opponent is a strong enemy who has mastered immortal jutsu. As soon as Sasuke's voice fell, for some unknown reason, the white bone spears around them suddenly shattered and turned into white ashes in the wind. This sudden change made Sasuke puzzled. Hey, what's going on? Haku, who was hiding in the ice mirror, was also shocked. He quickly looked at Kimimaro and found that Kimimaro, who had suppressed Naruto, was suddenly half kneeling on the ground and coughing up blood. Knowing that Kimimaro's body couldn't take it anymore, Haku didn't care about Sasuke and Ningxi anymore. His figure flashed, and he landed next to Kimimaro. He asked with concern, Are you okay? Kimimaro, who was coughing violently, ordered, Don't worry about me. Cough, cough. Go and carry out the mission, quickly. Haku glanced at Naruto, Sasuke, Ningxi, Bunta the Toad, and Senya, who were all looking at him. Then, he resolutely carried Kimimaro on his back and chose to retreat. Between the mission and his companions, he chose his companions and was mentally prepared to accept any punishment from Orochimaru. Seeing Kimimaro retreat while coughing up blood, Naruto, Sasuke, and Ningxi, who had just arrived, all heave a long sigh of relief. If it weren't for Kimimaro's body, they wouldn't have been able to defeat him. Swoosh! Just when the three of them were a little relaxed, a figure suddenly jumped out, and with an ear-piercing screech, it rushed towards Sasuke, who was on top of Bunta the Toad's head. You? Sasuke was shocked. He didn't have time to react, and the opponent was already in front of him. Ningxi, who was beside him, was also shocked, and his movements were a little slower. Bang! Suddenly, another figure appeared out of thin air, and it stopped the figure that was rushing towards Sasuke. With a muffled sound, both of them fell to the ground. Sasuke, who had a face full of fear, looked over and realized that the person who had attacked him was a ninja dressed as a grass ninja, and the one who had helped him was the Kirin of the Mist Village. On the ground, Orochimaru, who was dressed as a grass ninja, looked coldly at Hyojin, who had stopped him from capturing Sasuke, and said, "Little brat from the Mist Village, you will have to pay the price for being a busybody." Hyojin smiled lightly and said, "You are the busybody, aren't you?" Bang! At this time, in a puff of white smoke, Ningxi summoned the big wild boar. At the same time, the three giant summoning beasts, Sinja, Bunta the Toad, and Big Wild Boar, surrounded Suijin and Orochimaru on the ground. On Snake Sinja, Naruto crossed his arms in front of his chest. On Toad Bunta, Sasuke had one hand on his waist. On Big Wild Boar, Ningxi raised both of his hands slightly, and he made a soft starting gesture. The three people on their respective spiritual beasts looked down, and they stared at Hyojin and Orochimaru, who were on the ground like tigers watching their prey. While being surrounded by the three beasts, Hyojin and Orochimaru looked at each other and smiled. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 973. Seeing Haku and Kimimaro choose to retreat, Kakashi and the other Invigilators breathed a sigh of relief. Up until now, the Invigilators could be said to be trembling with fear, as if they were treading on thin ice. Because no one had expected that the second round of the exam would be so dangerous. Kurenai sighed with emotion. I didn't expect the students of a Sound Village to be so strong. Are these kids all monsters? Mute nodded with a solemn expression. Well, the strength of the two sound ninjas named Kimimaro and Haku is probably close to the level of an elite jonin. Kakashi, on the other hand, frowned and fell in a deep thought. Before the exam, the advisory elder group evaluated Kimimaro and agreed that he had the strength of a jonin, but they didn't expect that they would still underestimate him and underestimate the Sound Village. Kimimaro could rely on his own power to suppress Sasuke Bunta the Toad. This alone was enough to make people speechless. It must be known that a jonin can't deal with Bunta Toad alone, not to mention Sasuke, who has the 3 Tomo Sharingan, and can combine with Bunta Toad to perform fire oil compound ninjutsu. In the face of this combination, not to mention a jonin, even some elite jonin may not be able to suppress them. So in Kakashi's view, Mute's judgment just now wasn't accurate. Kimimaro's strength, or to be more precise, Kimimaro's strength under the effect of the curse has definitely reached the level of Kage. In addition to Kimimaro, the strength of Haku, who has the ice release Kekiai limit, was also surprising. In the process of fighting against Naruto and Oshida, as well as Sasuke and Bunta Toad, this ice release ninja of the Sound Village fought with ease. In the end, if it wasn't for Ningxi's timely arrival to help Sasuke, Kakashi wouldn't have been able to resist intervening in the battle and stopping the exam. It is no exaggeration to say that Haku's strength is close to the Kage level. 2 genin in a small shinobi village that was just established not long ago actually have the strength of a Kage, or at least close to the Kage level. This kind of thing is unimaginable. What made Kakashi feel even more strange was that Kimimaro, who had Bone Vein, and Haku, who had Ice Escape, seemed to be compatible with Wind Chime and Sui Jin, the two members of God's organization. Is it a coincidence, or, right at this moment, a new unexpected event occurred in the surroundings? Shortly after Kimimaro and Haku retreated, a grass ninja suddenly attacked Sasuke, and the Kirin of the Mist Village also intervened. Both of them were involved in the battle. Kakashi immediately said, How did the Kirin from the Hidden Mist sect get here so quickly? Asuma also had a puzzled look on his face. That's not right. This Chilin doesn't look like he just fought a battle. Could it be that he wasn't injured in the fight with the Hidden Cloud Druid? Even a Kage-level expert wouldn't be able to get away unscathed. Therefore, the Kirin in the Mist Village appeared here as if nothing happened, which surprised the Jonin Invigilators. On the battlefield, Orochimaru grinned as he looked at Sasuke, Naruto, and Neji, who were standing on top of the three summer beasts and looking down at him. Orochimaru didn't have the slightest fear or anxiety of being surrounded. Instead, his eyes were filled with greed. Sasuke easily dealt with Kimimaro and Onimaru, and also fought against Kimimaro and Haku for so long. He was very satisfied with his performance, which was why he couldn't help but attack. Kuroto was the same, with a faint smile on his face under the mask. At this time, Sasuke, who was standing on top of the toad, gritted his teeth and roared, "You damn guys, provoking me one by one, you don't put our Uchiha in your eyes. It seems that I must teach you a hard lesson today, so that you know how to be in awe of Uchiha." The repeated setbacks made Sasuke, who was preparing to show his strength in this exam, lose his balance, and Orochimaru's sneak attack just now made the anger in his heart completely erupt. Orochimaru glanced at Hyojin with a faint smile. "It seems that we are in big trouble." Hyojin also smiled indifferently. Orochimaru's eyes were cold. For a moment, he found that he couldn't see through the mask Kirin, so he tentatively said, "Why? Is your target also Uchiha Sasuke?" Hyojin replied, "Kind of like Orochimaru." He also regarded Sasuke as a test subject, but compared to Orochimaru, he didn't covet the body and Sharingan of Sasuke's Uchiha clan. Licking his lips, Orochimaru smiled and said, "Then let's see who will succeed." "Okay," Hyojin replied with a smile. Listening to Orochimaru and Sui Jin chatting on the ground as if there was no one else around, Sasuke couldn't help but get angry. "Grass Shinobi and Kirin, you two have successfully angered me." "Is that so?" Orochimaru and Hyojin chuckled at the same time. Almost at the same time, Orochimaru's body suddenly elongated like a snake, and with a swoosh, he pounced on Sasuke, who was standing on top of Bunta, the toad's head. And Hyojin also leaped up and pounced on Sasuke. But at this moment, Orochi Shinya ignored Orochimaru and spat a mouthful of petrifying solution at Hyojin. "Hey, Sasuke is mine." Orochimaru, who was pouncing on Sasuke, saw this scene, and the corner of his mouth slightly raised. The body he was using now was the body of a medicine master who practiced the Ryuchi Cave immortal technique, so he naturally had a sense of closeness with Shinya, who was born in the Ryuchi Cave. Therefore, among the three giant psychic beasts in the field, Shinya could barely be regarded as his half-teammate. The reason why he didn't make a move before was because he wanted to use this point to plot against Sui Jin and teach this arrogant mist kid a bloody lesson. However, just as Orochimaru raised the corner of his mouth and his eyes were filled with ridicule, a huge suction from the ground suddenly enveloped him and pulled him back to the ground. He was taken aback and immediately turned his head to look. He found that it was the big wild boar under Hyojin Nixi's feet. It used some kind of ninjutsu on him, and it seemed to be targeting only him. Suddenly, of the two people who pounced on Sasuke, one was forced back by Orochi Shinya's petrifying solution, and the other was pulled back to the ground by the big wild boar's ninjutsu. Who a cool breeze blew, and the five people, including Sasuke, Naruto, and Ningxi, looked at each other. The scene was a little awkward. After looking at each other with a fake smile, Orochimaru and Hyojin, the master and disciple pair, realized at the same time that they had been set up by the other party. There was a mole among the three giant psychic beasts. There was a sudden blackout last night, and this chapter is to make up for yesterday's second update. Today is Monday, and the leaderboard will be updated, so I beg for recommendation votes. Also, I would like to thank the students who donated yesterday. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 974. Xianyu is purposely going easy on us. There's something wrong with that wild boar. As they stared at each other, Hyojin and Orochimaru had their own thoughts. After pondering for a while, Hyojin understood the reason why Xianyu went easy on Orochimaru. The Apothecary Pocket's immortal technique was most likely the same as the one in the original space and time, which was learned from the Ryuchi cave. Therefore, it could be said that it came from the same source as Xianyu. Xianyu must have sensed something, which was why he ignored Orochimaru, who was using the Apothecary Pocket's body, and specifically targeted Hyojin. Because he was biased in choosing his enemy, it was not considered going against Naruto's will. Moreover, he did not like the toad from Mount Myaboku, so he did not like the arrogant Sasuke either. As for Hyojin and the wild boar, they had signed a spirit summoning contract. This type of contract was based on the soul. In other words, no matter what clone body Kuroto controls, he will be able to summon the Great Wild Boar. This is similar to how Orochimaru can summon the Great Wild Boar. No matter how many times he uses the undead reincarnation, he can summon the Great Wild Boar. Therefore, although the Wild Boar was summoned by Ningxi, it actually knew that Hyojin, who was controlling the Thunder Escape clone, was its master. You're courting death. Seeing that Hyojin and Orochimaru had underestimated him again and again, even when they were obviously surrounded, they still dared to take the initiative to attack again and again. Sasuke was instantly angered. After saying that, Sasuke quickly formed a seal and shouted, "Fire escape technique, grand fireball technique." Boom! The huge fireball instantly smashed towards Hyojin and Orochimaru, making a loud explosion. Then, Xianyu swept his tail fiercely. His huge tail carried boundless waves of air, as well as the trees and gravel that were sent flying. Like a sandstorm, it ruthlessly swept towards Hyojin and Orochimaru, who had just jumped out of the flames. But at this moment, the big wild boar charged over without any warning, intercepting Xianyu's tail strike. Bang! With a loud muffled sound, Xianyu's tail struck the big wild boar's body, knocking it to the ground. Naruto, who was standing on Xianyu's head, immediately shouted, "Wrong, wrong. Ningxi and the others are on our side." Xianyu coldly snorted, "It came out on its own. Don't blame me." The wild boar shook its head and stood up. To Ningxi's astonishment, it pounced towards Xianyu. Rumble, before long, the two humongous creatures fought and ravaged the forest of death, which was already in a mess. The two teammates unexpectedly fought among themselves. This change caught Sasuke and Bunto off guard. Taking advantage of the gap between Xianyu and the big wild boar, Orochimaru and Hyojin rushed to the top of Bunto's head and rushed toward Sasuke. Naruto and Ningxi, who were unable to stop the fierce battle between Xianyu and the big wild boar, had no choice but to temporarily abandon their respective summoned beasts and jump to the top of Bunto's head, urgently supporting Sasuke. So, all 5 people on the battlefield gathered on the top of Bunto's head for a while. Humph, a mere grass ninja. Looking at Orochimaru, who was rushing towards him, Sasuke sneered and held his kunai to meet it. The corners of his mouth rose, full of confidence, because under the inside of his 3-tomo Sharingan, he feels that he has completely captured the other party's every move. What's more, the other party is just a genin from the grass ninja village. It's not worth being too serious at all. In the blink of an eye, the two sides collided. With a strange smile, Orochimaru waved an ordinary fist, directly aiming at Sasuke's cheek. Stupid guy. Sasuke smiled confidently, with the help of the 3-tomo Sharingan spinning in his eye sockets. His body slightly leaned to the side. While dodging Orochimaru's fist, he stabbed the kunai in his hand. Bang! But just when Sasuke was sure that he had dodged Orochimaru's fist, in a low muffled sound, his cheek was hit by Orochimaru's fist. The sharp pain on his face instantly made Sasuke's mind blank. Then his whole body flew out and fell heavily to the ground. How is this possible? I clearly saw through his movements. Sasuke, who fell to the ground, looked sluggish. His whole face was bruised and swollen, and his nose was bleeding. And compared to the burning pain on his face, he was more concerned that his Sharingan had clearly captured the entire trajectory of the opponent's fist, and he had dodged to an absolutely safe area in advance. But why was he still hit? Sasuke. Seeing Sasuke being punched out, Naruto and Ningxi, who were not far away, shouted loudly and flew over. Hyojin changed his mind at this time. He did not continue to rush to Sasuke, but his body swayed, and he blocked Naruto and Ningxi for Orochimaru. For him, it was the same who provoked Sasuke. Since Orochimaru had already started to make a move, it was better for him to help Orochimaru block Naruto and Ningxi instead of going up and making trouble. Of course, if Orochimaru wanted to kidnap Sasuke or dig out Sasuke's Sharingan, then he would not stand by and watch. Seeing Hyojin blocking the way, Naruto, who was worried about Sasuke, did not even have time to use ninjutsu and directly punched over. Swoosh! Knowing that Naruto, who had activated the Sage mode and put on the tailed beast coat, had infinite strength, Hyojin did not take it head-on at all and directly activated the body flicker technique to flash behind Naruto. Seeing Hyojin disappear in front of him, Naruto was a little startled and subconsciously turned around. His reaction was so fast that even Hyojin was a little surprised. However, at this time, Hyojin had already pressed one hand on Naruto's back and shouted, "Seal." In an instant, a black sealing technique extended from the palm of Hyojin's palm that was pressed on Naruto's back, like a chain, quickly covered Naruto's whole body. As the sealing technique spread, the tailed beast coat wrapped around Naruto immediately retracted into his body. Naruto, who had just turned around, was taken aback. Bang! Before Naruto could recover, he was kicked away by Hyojin. Seeing that Hyojin had repelled Naruto in an instant, Ningxi's face turned cold, and he attacked with his soft fist with all his strength. Under the mask, a smile appeared on Hyojin's face. While paying attention to Sasuke, he attacked Ningxi. On the other side, Orochimaru slowly walked toward Sasuke, who had fallen to the ground, and then grabbed Sasuke's neck, lifted him up, and said with a smile, "What a mess." Sasuke, who was grabbed by the neck, was ashamed and angry. "Damn it! How dare you?" Sasuke was just halfway through his words when Orochimaru's hand suddenly tightened, causing him to swallow the second half of his sentence. His whole face was red, and he seemed to be out of breath. That's all I have for today. This chapter should be from yesterday, so I still owe one chapter from yesterday. In addition to the 2 chapters from today, it seemed that I owe 3 chapters without realizing it. But don't worry, everyone, I will make up for what I owe. I won't go back on my word. Also, I want to ask for recommendation tickets on Monday, and thank the students who gave me gifts yesterday and today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 975. Sasuke, who was choked by Orochimaru, couldn't breathe. His face turned red, and his consciousness began to blur. Even his eyes gradually lost focus. Am I going to die? Damn it, how can I die here, in the hands of a despicable Kusanagi? I haven't killed the fire demon yet to avenge my father. Someone save me. Naruto, where are you? The monstrous anger and boundless resentment in Sasuke's heart turned into bone-deep fear and unwillingness at this moment. At the same time, the 3 Magatama Sharingan in his eye sockets began to spin rapidly. His eyes, which had been gradually losing focus, suddenly shone with a touch of demonic light. Staring at Sasuke's Sharingan, full of fear and unwillingness, Orochimaru grinned and stuck out his slender tongue to lick his lips. TSK, what a pair of fascinating eyes. At this time, Sasuke gathered his remaining strength, put his hand into the ninja bag at his waist, took out a kunai, and stabbed at Orochimaru's arm that was choking his neck. Swish and a splash of blood, The kunai in Sasuke's hand stabbed into Orochimaru's arm. But Orochimaru didn't care at all. Instead, he smiled inexplicably. "You bastard! Hurry! Let me go, let me go!" Seeing Orochimaru's arm that was stabbed by his kunai healed instantly, Sasuke's heart became more and more afraid. He began to hit Orochimaru with his hands and feet in a panic. But this kind of powerless punches and kicks are nothing more than tickles for Orochimaru. He didn't even try to dodge, and with a playful look on his face, he seemed to enjoy the feeling of torturing the Uchiha clan. Not far away, the scene of Sasuke struggling painfully and helplessly in Orochimaru's hands was seen by Hyojin. He secretly thought, in terms of training ninjas, Orochimaru is really good. He could see that Orochimaru's actions at the moment were not only to vent his inner jealousy of the Sharingan, but also to test and provoke Sasuke. In the matter of the Sharingan, Orochimaru, as one of the Sannin of Mai, has suffered too many losses. In detail, he has suffered losses in the hands of Itachi, Hiriko, Hyojin's fire clone, and Danzo's Sharingan. Especially in the face of Danzo's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, he had no power to resist. Not only did he fail to take away Danzo's perfect body that was fused with 7 kinds of Kekkei Genkai, but he was also killed by Danzo with just a glance. Even his body was completely melted away. Until now, he still had to live in the body of his subordinate. It is precisely because of such a painful lesson that he wisely avoided Jishuei, Shinichi, Itachi, and other powerful Uchiha who possess Manjikyu Sharingan, and set his target on the Uchiha Sasuke, who has the reputation of being a genius but has not really grown up yet. But Orochimaru is Orochimaru after all, and he's indeed a master in playing with people's hearts. His act of not caring about Sasuke's resistance was sharper than any words, and almost instantly broke Sasuke's heart, making Sasuke, who won the first rank in the shinobi school, known as the genius of Uchiha, instantly change from a cold and arrogant boy to a weak and helpless child. Even if Hyojin personally took action, he wouldn't be able to achieve such a stimulating effect. Under the stimulation of death, Hyojin noticed that the Sharingan in Sasuke's eye sockets seemed to have changed. In his Byakugan vision, he found that the chakra in Sasuke's eye sockets and brain area is abnormally active, and the chakra in Sasuke's body also seems to be gathering towards the eye sockets. Will it work? A glimmer of expectation flashed in Hyojin's eyes. Release Sasuke. Stop. At the same time, Naruto and Ningxi, who were beaten back by Hyojin, also noticed that Sasuke was in danger. Seeing that Sasuke's Sharingan had started to change, Hyojin naturally couldn't let Naruto and Ningxi interrupt the process, so he didn't hold back anymore. At the same time, he activated the Thunder Release Stimulation Technique and the Body Flicker Technique, flashing in front of Naruto with the speed of teleportation. Naruto was shocked, and then he was instantly knocked down to the ground, because the natural energy used to enter the Sage mode was transferred to him by Orochi. In the previous battle with Haku and Kimimaro, he had almost used up this natural energy. So when he was beaten back by Hyojin, he had already exited the Sage mode, and the horizontal pupils in his eyes had returned to normal. Moreover, he was hit by the 4-symbol seal that Hyojin had just cast, so his connection with the 9 tails in his body was temporarily cut off. So, whether it was his speed, strength, or perception, they had all returned to normal. Facing Hyojin's extreme speed, he didn't even have time to react and was knocked down to the ground by one punch. Swoosh! At this time, the sound of Hyojin breaking through the wind just now arrived. Ningxi, who witnessed all this on the side, was shocked. So fast. As a jutsu Kekkei ninja, Ningxi's inside ability was unquestionable, but he only saw the general movement of the Kirin in the mist just now, and he didn't even see how Naruto was knocked down. This was undoubtedly beyond his imagination. In his impression, even the teacher of the 5th Sama Naruto, Hyojin, probably didn't have such a fast speed. How can a Genin of the Mist have such an exaggerated speed? Is it a Jinjutsu? Mixed thoughts poured into Ningxi's mind for a while. At this time, Hyojin, who had taken care of Naruto, walked towards Ningxi and said with a chuckle, "Yo, is it the Hyuga clan? Did you just use the soft fist of the Hyuga clan? It doesn't seem that good. Hyojin was very curious about how Ningxi would perform in the face of a strong enemy, so he played the role of the bad guy. Corinne, Ningxi's eyes focused, and he raised his hands with a firm expression and once again put on the starting position of the soft fist. At this moment, he cleared all the complicated thoughts in his mind and concentrated on the battle. Because in his opinion, as the disciple of Hokage, even if he was defeated, he must not retreat. With his feet on the ground, Ningxi rushed forward to Hyojin, 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Good eyes. Hyojin chuckled and went up to greet. Ningxi's soft fist was no secret in his eyes, and after activating the thunder release stimulation method to stimulate the cell tissues of his body, the speed of his thunder release clone in a short period of time could even exceed the speed of his in release. Coupled with the Byakugan, Ningxi's attack was like a slow-motion replay in his eyes. Bang! After easily dodging Ningxi's fists, Hyojin hit Ningxi's abdomen with his knee. Seeing how Hyojin easily broke his soft fist, Ningxi vomited blood and fell out with a shocked expression. At this time, Hyojin spread out his hands and said mercilessly, "No matter how high the technique is, it still needs speed and strength to support it. Your physical skills are a mess in my eyes." As he spoke, Hyojin stepped on Naruto's head, who was struggling to get up from the ground, and said calmly, "Hey, is my endurance only at this level? Here's the first update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes." Chapter 976. Kuroto looked at Naruto, who was obviously being stepped on, but still gritting his teeth and trying to stand up, as well as Ningxi, who was covering his stomach in pain, but had a firm look in his eyes. A smile appeared on Hyojin's face under the mask. For ninjas who haven't really experienced war and killing, some setbacks are not a bad thing. Especially teenagers like Sasuke, Naruto, and Ningxi, who are extremely talented and have strength beyond their peers, but have always been under the protection of their village, family, and relatives. They don't have a clear understanding of the dangers of the shinobi world, and they have never established the most simple concept of failure equals death in their minds. If a youth like him was unlucky, he would easily lose his life. For example, Tsunade's younger brother, Saruki, rushed to the battlefield with enthusiasm, but lost his life in confusion. Therefore, instead of letting them encounter a real enemy and pay a painful price to understand this point, it is better to let them taste the bitterness and fear of having their life and death in the hands of others. Therefore, when he attacked just now, Hyojin didn't hold back and almost used his full strength. Naruto, whose head was being stepped on, tried to stand up again. Hyojin exerted force on his foot and stepped on Naruto again. "Idiot, at this time, you should be lying on the ground obediently and then beg me to spare your life." Naruto shouted unyieldingly. "What are you talking about? I, Uzumaki Naruto, want to become Naruto's man. And Sasuke is still waiting for me to help him." Hyojin bent down and leaned in front of Naruto with a playful look on his face. "You want to become Naruto? Find a way to break free from my foot first." Not far away, on the branch of a big tree, Jishuei and Shinichi, the two kaleidoscopes of the Uchiha family, stood side by side, looking at Sasuke, whose neck was strangled by Orochimaru. Watching Sasuke struggling helplessly in Orochimaru's hands, Jishuei narrowed her eyes. Shinichi smiled. "Don't worry, nothing will happen. Even if Sasuke's neck is really broken, as long as it's within 3 seconds, I have a way to save him." After passing the adaptation period of the transplanted first-generation cells, Shinichi's ocular power gradually recovered to its peak state. Right now, if he didn't hold back his ocular power and activated the time-stopping house, he could go back 3 seconds. In other words, as long as he wanted to, he could save anyone who had died less than 3 seconds ago. Of course, using the Manjikyu Sharingan class ocular power to the limit is a great burden and risk even for him, who has transplanted first-generation cells. If it's not someone of great importance, he won't easily take action. Jishuei shook her head and said, I'm not worried about Sasuke's safety. After all, Kirin is over there. I just feel that the movement of that Kusanagi just now is a bit strange. Shinichi nodded and said, well, that punch just now, it's reasonable to say that Sasuke should be able to avoid it. Perhaps it's because chakra consumed too much energy. In fact, from the beginning to the end, Shinichi and Jishuei of the Uchiha family have been protecting Sasuke and Naruto. Therefore, Shinichi saw Sasuke's performance in the exam today. In his opinion, Sasuke is worthy of the title of genius of the Uchiha family. At least at the same age, he thinks that he can't compare to Sasuke. Jishuei said, maybe. Shinichi suddenly asked, by the way, who is that Kirin guy? Looks like he has some tricks up his sleeve. Even I want to spar with him. Jishuei replied, he should be a newcomer in the organization. Where did the boss recruit these guys? After a pause, Shinichi asked, is that Kusanagi ninja also an accomplice of our organization? Jishuei shook her head. I haven't heard Senpai mention this before. He shouldn't be one of us. While speaking, Jishuei suddenly stopped. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. After a few breaths, along with the sound of breaking wind, Kakashi and the other invigilators landed on the tree where Shinichi and Shursui were. Immediately, Kakashi said to Jishuei, it seems that we have to intervene. Unlike the previous battle between Hyojin and Darui, when they found that Sasuke, Naruto, and Ningxi were in danger, the invigilators in charge of the exam became nervous. After all, in the eyes of the invigilators, Hyojin and Darui were just ninjas from outside the village. Even if something happened to them, it had nothing to do with them. But Sasuke, Naruto, and Ningxi were different. These three kids were either the disciples of the consulting elder or Naruto. Moreover, Naruto was the Nine Tails' Jinchuriki, which was under the protection of the village. Jishuei hurriedly stopped Kakashi. Let's wait and see. Wait. Kakashi was a little puzzled. Sasuke was almost strangled to death in the distance. How could Jishuei still be calm? On the battlefield, Sasuke was still struggling in the hands of Orochimaru, but his red face gradually lost its color and began to become pale. His limbs seemed to have lost strength, and the extent of his struggle was much smaller than before. Hyojin, who was stepping on Naruto, glanced at Sasuke, and then immediately moved his eyes to Naruto and Ningxi. Because Suijin used his full strength just now, both Naruto and Neji were seriously injured. Naruto has the physique of the Uzumaki clan, so his skin is rough and his flesh is thick, so he's slightly better off, but Neji at least had a few ribs broken by Suijin's knee strike just now, so he couldn't get up even after trying several times. But whether it was Naruto or Ningxi, neither of them gave up, still gritting their teeth and trying to regroup. And looking at the three struggling kids, Hyojin's heart flashed a thought. Among the three of them, who can break through their own limits? Sasuke, Naruto, and Ningxi's strength, if placed in the same period as Hyojin, is definitely not inferior to Kakashi, and it is very likely that they will shine in the Third Shinobi World War. But unfortunately, at the moment when the Akatsuki is about to launch a large-scale attack, there is no time for them to slowly grow. They can only continue to break through their own limits in adversity, so they can protect themselves and the people they cherish under the threat of the Akatsuki. Is it Naruto, Sasuke, or Ningxi? Glancing at the three of them one by one, Hyojin's face under the mask has an additional look of anticipation. At this moment, a huge orange chakra burst out from Naruto's body under Hyojin's feet, and the seals that covered Naruto's body instantly collapsed. Swish, then, a giant chakra claw stretched out from Naruto's back and grabbed at Hyojin. Hyojin quickly jumped back, then looked down at the eye-catching claw mark on his chest, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 977. Although it was just a shallow scratch and there was not much blood, it was enough to surprise Hyojin. After all, due to the lightning escape stimulation technique, the speed and reflexes of this lightning escape clone were among the best among all of his clones. Only the wind escape clone with atavism could be compared to it. Even if it was the Yin escape clone, if it did not activate the Tenseigan chakra mode in its normal state, it would not be as fast as this thunder escape clone. But even with such speed, it almost got hit. While Hyojin was secretly surprised, Naruto slowly stood up, lowered his head, and the expression on his face could not be seen. At this time, Naruto's whole body was wrapped in the orange-red Nine Tails chakra. This time, the tailed beast coat seemed to be more intense and violent than before. There were constantly bubbles boiling and tumbling inside, as if reflecting Naruto's current angry and anxious state of mind. Then, tails stretched out from the tailed beast coat. 1, 2, 3. When he saw the fifth tail slowly stretching out from the tailed beast coat, Hyojin's expression suddenly changed, and he exclaimed, "It's going berserk?" The number of tails directly reflected the degree of the tailed beast transformation. Before this, Naruto in the tailed beast transformation had at most 4 tails, so when the fifth tail appeared, it either meant that Naruto had broken through again, or Naruto had lost control and went berserk. Naruto's sudden outbreak immediately attracted the attention of several people around him. Feeling the violent Nine Tails chakra on Naruto, Ningxi on the ground hurriedly shouted, "Naruto, wake up!" Orochimaru, who was strangling Sasuke's neck, smiled casually and said, "Lost control." In the distance, seeing Naruto reveal the fifth tail, the main examiner Asuma exclaimed, "Not good. Naruto is going berserk." Kakashi stared at Naruto as he prepared to launch the Flying Thunder God technique at any time. The rampage of Nine Tails' human Jinchuria was no small matter, but fortunately, there was more than one kaleidoscope Uchiha in the village now, so the tragedy of the Nine Tails rebellion would not happen again. Compared to Naruto, who seemed to have gone berserk, Jishuei and Shinichi paid more attention to Sasuke. It's just that the expectation on their faces is getting less and less and more disappointment, because Sasuke is obviously going into asphyxiation, and he didn't awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan as they hoped. In the field, Walala. In the boiling tailed beast coat, after the fifth tail, the sixth tail also stretched out. At the same time, Naruto's skin began to gradually melt, becoming bloody, and his body also lowered like a beast, and a large amount of white steam overflowed from the corner of his mouth. "TSK, that Nine Tails guy dared to play with me." Kuroto cursed under his breath. Swish! Suddenly, Naruto, who had revealed the state of 6 tails, moved. His figure flashed, and he suddenly pounced on Hyojin and fiercely waved his claws. Hyojin's expression became solemn, and he didn't dare to be careless, and quickly flew away to avoid it. In the face of wood release, a natural means to restrain oneself like the Sharingan, Nine Tails did not seem to have any cards. But in the face of ordinary ninjas, Nine Tails was almost invincible. In the chaos of Nine Tails, even though there were 3 generations and 4 generations in the village, the Nine Tails still turned the world upside down. In the end, 4 generations sacrificed themselves to use Ghoul's seal to solve the raging Nine Tails, and that disaster was quelled. Therefore, in the face of the 6-tailed beast Naruto, Hyojin, who was controlling the Thunder Release clone, did not dare to underestimate the enemy, because his Thunder Release clone did not have any convenient means to restrain the tailed beast. In the original space and time, Tendo Pain could not suppress Naruto in this state. Rumble, although Hyojin avoided it. Naruto's chakra giant claws extended all the way out, scratching a deep trench in the ground, accompanied by a roar, instantly destroying a large number of trees. Just when everyone thought that Naruto had gone berserk, Naruto, who had forced Hyojin to retreat, did not chase after Hyojin. Instead, he pounced on Orochimaru, who was strangling Sasuke's neck without warning. Caught off guard, Orochimaru could only let go of Sasuke and retreat far away. At this time, 2 giant chakra claws stretched out from Naruto's tailed beast coat, one grabbing Ningxi and the other grabbing Sasuke. Then, with just a few ups and downs, they disappeared into the forest without a trace. Bam, bam, bam. As the three of them retreated, the three giant psychic beasts, Sinya the snake, Bunta the toad, and Big Wild Boar, all dispelled their psychic abilities in the white smoke. Looking at the direction in which Naruto disappeared, Hyojin was stunned for a moment before he reacted. This brat Naruto, he was actually pretending to go berserk just now. He even fooled me. Without a doubt, Naruto did not go berserk just now. He pretended to lose consciousness and go berserk just to confuse Hyojin and Orochimaru, so that he could save Sasuke and Ningxi, who had already lost the ability to fight. Naruto probably doesn't know this. It's Nine Tails. Hyojin quickly guessed that this idea must have been taught to Naruto by Nine Tails, so he laughed. From the cooperation just now, it was obvious that the combination of Naruto and Nine Tails was getting more and more tacit. Moreover, Naruto was able to maintain his own consciousness in the state of revealing six tails, which meant that his tailed beast transformation had broken through again. He had made great progress in controlling Nine Tails chakra and was one step closer to the Nine Tails chakra mode. Orochimaru also looked in the direction of Naruto's departure and smiled. Interesting. Sasuke was rescued by Naruto, but he did not care much, because he had found that all the Jonin invigilators had gathered nearby, staring at this side, so at this time, he no longer had the idea of forcibly taking Sasuke away. Immediately, Orochimaru turned his head and looked deeply at Hyojin. He stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. Kirin of the Mist Village, I'll remember you. Swish, without waiting for Hyojin to answer, Orochimaru's figure flashed and disappeared. Xiang Lin and Shuizuki rushed to Hyojin's side at this time. Staring at the eye-catching scratch on Hyojin's chest, Xiang Lin quickly stretched out her arm. It's just a flesh wound. Hyojin smiled and shook his head. Shuizuki looked around at the mess caused by Kimamaro's dance of the early ferns, Haku's ice release, Sasuke and Bunta the Toad's toad oil flame bomb, and the fight between Orochi Sinya and the Big Wild Boar. She faintly sighed. Even if it's a ninja village-level battle, it's nothing more than this. Hyojin sighed softly. As expected, Naruto is the only one who can break through himself. Is this the child of the prophecy? The first update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 978. While he was happy for Naruto's breakthrough, Hyojin also felt a little emotional. In fact, he knew very well that among the three of them, Naruto was the most likely to break through his own limit. Compared to Naruto, even Sasuke, who was the reincarnation of Indra, was obviously weaker. But he still couldn't help but hope that Sasuke and Ningxi could also break through their own limits. Especially Ningxi, he hoped that his disciple, who had been bound by fate, could also dig out the hidden potential in his bloodline in a desperate situation. But the truth was so cold and cruel. Sure enough, I was thinking too much. Hyojin shook his head. Not everyone could break through their own limits in a desperate situation, or in other words, only those who had this ability were the real abnormal, and Ningxi was undoubtedly ordinary. He did have talent that surpassed the ordinary Hyuga clansman, but compared to Naruto, who was the child of prophecy, he was still the ordinary one. In the original time and space, Ningxi's death could be summed up as an ordinary person who made an extraordinary choice and paid the price. In Hyojin's opinion, Ningxi's pursuit of Naruto and Sasuke was actually futile, because the gap between Ningxi and the reincarnation of the two sons of Sage of Samsara, Naruto and Sasuke, was not something that could be made up with just hard work. And this also made Hyojin empathize, because as he mastered the purple lightning and mist release bloodline limit, he had a major breakthrough in the development of this thunder release clone, and he was one step closer to breaking through the bloodline net. It was also because of this that his future was inexplicably shaken. Looking at Ningxi, who was still gradually being left behind by Naruto and Sasuke, he didn't know if his attempt to break through the bloodline succession net were as futile and laughable in the eyes of people of a higher level as Ningxi was in his own eyes. Can fate really be changed? Can I become the third Kekii net in the shinobi world after Kagaya? and sage of 6 paths. Can I really become a god? Hyojin wasn't shaken and troubled for too long, so he collected his thoughts. As the saying goes, man proposes, God disposes. Since he had already come this far, there was no way he would back down. Even if he had to die, he would die on the path of breaking through the bloodline succession net. Meanwhile, Shui Yu asked, "Where are we going next?" After pondering for a moment, Hyojin said, "To the central sentry tower." After saying that, Hyojin jumped and galloped towards the central sentry tower of the Forest of Death. Because of the encounter with Mai's team that was affected by the battle between him and Druid, they obtained a scroll and gathered the 2 scrolls needed for the second exam. So now they don't need to look for trouble with other teams and can directly rush to the central sentry tower to complete the exam. After all, the Sharkskin is still in the casino, so they still have to pass the exam. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After Kuroto led Xiang Lin and Mizukage away from the battlefield, the group of invigilators on the periphery also landed on the empty battlefield one after another. Looking around, the invigilators were speechless. Everywhere they looked were crisscrossed ravines of different depths and large and small pits, especially the place where Tenya and the big wild boar fought. There were many huge depressions. The air was full of the smell of burning, and the trees were burnt into black charcoal, emitting green smoke everywhere. Some of the trees had fallen to the side, some were half stuck in the mud, and some were toppled over in pieces. They had been burnt into a pile of unrecognizable charcoal. And the strange thing is, next to these flashing green smoke trees, you can see large pieces of condensed ice crystals and small puddles of floating ice. After a long time, Asma said, "Unknowingly, Naruto and Sasuke have grown to this point." Kurenai looked worried. "If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have let Hinata and the others sign up for this Chunin exam. I don't know how they are now." Kakashi nodded. "This Chunin exam is really not suitable for them." Naruto and Sasuke, the strongest of their batch, were forced into a life and death situation, not to mention other graduates of the same batch. They might really die. Richa looked at the direction in which Naruto, Sasuke, and Ningxi evacuated. Because of the Byakugan, he knew that Ningxi had just been seriously injured, and he was very worried. On Hyojin's side, on the way to the central sentry tower, their team was unimpeded. Almost all the teams they encountered fled at the sight of them. There was even a team that had set up a trap, and when they saw them, they didn't even bother to activate the trap and fled in panic. So, taking advantage of this leisure time, Hyojin pondered about Sasuke's awakening of the Manjikyu Sharingan. When Orochimaru abused Sasuke just now, the Sharingan in Sasuke's eye sockets did change under the emotional agitation. This, Hyojin is very sure of. But this is not enough, far from enough. The threat of death can be said to be the greatest emotional stimulation for the average person. But for Uchiha, it is not the best emotion to stimulate them to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan. From Uchiha Madara to Obsidian, Jishui, Shinichi, Itachi, and so on, none of them awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan because of the threat of death. This also once again verified Hyojin's analysis of the Uchiha clan. The best stimulation for each Uchiha is different, but the simple threat of death is not the best stimulation for any Uchiha. Their brain circuitry is somewhat different from that of ordinary people. And according to the situation observed today, and thinking about the reason why Sasuke awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan in the original time and space, Hyojin had a whole set of stimulation plans in his mind. It didn't take long for Hyojin's team to arrive at the central sentry tower. After handing over the Heaven and Earth scroll, they came to the rest area and found that Druid's team had already arrived here. In addition, Fuma's team was also in the rest area. As soon as they saw Hyojin, Kumo, Samui, and Hiroshi became nervous, and their eyes were full of vigilance. Fumo, on the other hand, came over with a curious face, circled around Hyojin a few times, and asked, "I heard that the rain just now was caused by the fight between you and the Kumo clan over there. Is this true?" Without waiting for Hyojin to answer, Fuma's two teammates pulled Fumo far away, looking at Hyojin's eyes full of fear. Hyojin smiled indifferently, and then casually found a place to sit down. Obviously, his performance in this second exam has attracted a lot of people's attention, and among the candidates, he has become the image of the villain Big Boss. The second update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. In addition, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 979. As time passed, some examinees arrived at the Central Sentry Tower and completed the second round of the exam. After Hyojin's team, the first to arrive were San Cripsis's Hanju, Kankuro, and Ziluo. When Ningxi rushed over to support Naruto and Sasuke, Xiaoli and Tian fought 2 against 3 and were eventually defeated, losing the scrolls. After gathering a pair of Heaven and Earth scrolls, the 3 from San Cripsis did not take the risk to continue attacking other examinee teams in the Forest of Death. Instead, they went straight to the Central Sentry Tower. Following that, Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and Ningxi also rushed to the Central Sentry Tower. Because Sasuke had won an Earth Scroll when he fought against Sound Ninja, Tsutomu, Onamaru, and Duo Yuya, their team was fortunate enough to gather a pair of Heaven and Earth Scrolls and pass the exam. As Ningxi was separated from his companions and did not manage to gather a pair of Heaven and Earth Scrolls, he was eliminated. In the resting area, when Naruto saw Hyojin sitting calmly in the corner, he strode over under the gaze of all the examinees in the resting area and said, "Kirin, I lost previously, but I'll definitely defeat you." Hyojin glanced at Naruto and said calmly, "I'll be waiting." Sakura quickly pulled Naruto away and observed the other examinees in the resting area. It was only then that she realized that her team was the first to pass the exam, Mai's team. Sasuke sat alone at the side, looking unapproachable. However, the redness and swelling on his face had not completely subsided, and he seemed to be in a trance. Coupled with his gloomy and cold expression, he looked strangely comical. He was using his unfocused gaze to scan the surroundings, as if he was looking for someone in the resting area. Rumble, suddenly, a series of rumbles came from afar. It was obvious that the battle in the Forest of Death was still ongoing. The cheerful Fu asked everyone in the resting area, "How many teams do you think will pass the exam?" Shoju smiled. Even in the most ideal situation, only 12 out of the 24 teams will pass the exam, but we all know that this is impossible. There are already 5 teams here, so I'm guessing that no more than 3 teams will pass the exam. Hearing Shoju's analysis, many people in the resting area nodded. Samui of Kumo Village glanced at Kuroto and said, "Dedale of Rock Village hasn't arrived yet. With his strength, it shouldn't be difficult for him to pass this exam, so his team should be counted as a team." Mizukage, who was sitting beside Kuroto, chimed in, "Also, the 2 guys from the Sound Ninja are also ridiculously strong. Passing the exam shouldn't be a problem." Hearing Shueiwe mention Ninja of Sound, Sasuke's eyebrows rose, and his gloomy face became gloomy. Naruto nodded and said, "Well, Kimimaro is very powerful, and the guy who uses ice is also very strong. Their team will definitely pass the exam." Shueiwe curled her lips and said, "Idiot, that is called ice release. It is the blood limit of our Mist Village, and Kimimaro's bone vein is also the blood limit of our Mist Village." Naruto wondered, "But aren't those guys ninjas from the Ninja of Sound Village?" Shueiwe opened her mouth, but she didn't know how to explain to Naruto. Fu raised her hand and said, "One from Rock Village, one from Ninja of Sound Village. Then who is the third team that might pass the exam?" While everyone was analyzing, Sasuke, who had been silent all this time, said with killing intent, "It's the Ninja of Grass." Soon it was evening. Asuma came to the rest area and said to everyone, "The second exam is over. Everyone, come with me." "It's over?" Naruto was a little surprised and quickly asked, "Asuma-sensei, what about the other candidates? It can't be that only our team passed the exam, right?" Everyone also looked at Asuma, waiting for his answer, especially Sasuke. His eyes were unusually eager. Asma didn't explain much. Come with me first. It didn't take long for everyone to follow Asma to an indoor practice field. In the practice field, everyone found that the high-level members of the 5 great ninja villages, including the Kage, were all gathered here. And in addition to the high-level members of the village, there was also a team of candidates, which is Dedale's team. It wasn't until this moment that everyone knew that Dedale eliminated all the other teams and became the last team to pass the exam after their 5 teams. As a result, among the 6 teams that advanced, there was 1 team from each of the 5 great ninja villages, and the remaining team was Takiganobu, while the candidates from Kasanabu and Sound villages were all eliminated. After learning this news, Sasuke's face was full of disbelief at first, then gradually became blank, and then a strong unwillingness surged in his heart. Kimimaro and that damn Kasanabu, how could they lose? How could they lose? Damn, they should have been defeated by me. Sasuke's hands clenched tightly into fists, and even his breathing became rapid. Kimimaro and Kasanabu, who gave him great humiliation, were eliminated, which made him, who has been looking forward to revenge in the next exam, feel extremely uncomfortable. Whoosh! At this time, Kakashi landed beside Sasuke and pressed his hand on Sasuke's shoulder. Sasuke slowly raised his head and said, "Kakashi-sensei," Kakashi said calmly. "Don't make it difficult for yourself. Your performance is already very good." As the only team that advanced in Mai, Sasuke and Naruto barely saved Mai's face, so Kakashi's words weren't just to comfort him. They were sincere. Sasuke asked unwillingly, "Kimimaro and that Kusanabu, how could they be eliminated?" Kakashi shook his head and said, "No, they weren't eliminated. Kimimaro of the Sound Village forfeited due to physical reasons, and the Kusanabu who injured you also forfeited because his teammate was injured by another team." Sasuke was stunned and said, "What? They forfeited?" Kakashi looked at Dedale not far away and said, "Although it's a bit strange, they weren't eliminated by Dedale." Sakura came over and asked, "Kakashi-sensei, what about Ino, Zuen, and Hinata?" Naruto also asked, "Shikamaru-sensei, what about ya and the others?" Kakashi sighed. When Shikamaru proposed a forfeit, the 3 teams gathered a pair of Heaven and Earth scrolls and prepared to let one team avoid fighting and rush to the Central Sentry Tower to pass the exam. But at this time, they happened to encounter Dedale's team. The 3 teams were all defeated by Dedale, Kuroto, and Akatsuki, and the 3 scrolls on them were all taken away. It could be said that the biggest loser of the second exam was Konoha. Out of the 11 teams, only 1 had advanced. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 980. On the high platform, while the candidates were chatting with each other, the elders of the major villages were also chatting. The intensity of today's second exam was far beyond the expectations of the elders of the various villages, which surprised and delighted them at the same time. Because the emergence of a rising star not only means that the 5 great shinobi villages have successors, but it also means that the strength of the 5 great shinobi villages is continuously increasing, which is undoubtedly a good thing at a time when the threat of the Akatsuki organization is growing. However, the estrangement between them still exists. Under the premise of cooperation against the Akatsuki organization, the private struggles between the various villages have not stopped. For example, the 3 generations of Tsuchikage has been inquiring about the Cloud Druid, wanting to know more about the rising star of the Mist Village, who has mastered the Black Lightning and Mist Release. And after the 4 generations of Tsuchikage learned that the Mist Kirin possesses the Mist Release Kekkei Genkai, he repeatedly pressured the Mizukage of 4 generations of Tsuchikage to find out the identity of the Kirin. After all, whether it is the Mist Release Kekkei Genkai or the Lightning Attribute Chakra, both are originally monopolized by the Cloud Village. But now with the appearance of the Kirin, these secret techniques and Kekkei Genkai that are related to the core inheritance of the Cloud Village have suddenly fallen into the hands of the Mist Village, which is really difficult for the Cloud Village to accept. And it's not just these few villages. when Mai learned that a candidate named Zira from the Sand Crypsis has created a secret technique called the 7 Days Call and was evenly matched with Xiaoli, the elder in charge of intelligence gathering, Zhuan Xiaochun, also inquired the 4 generations of Kazakage. The power of the Hashiman Inner Gate is well known to the elders of the Mai clan. During the Third Shinobi War, Dai, as a genin of the Mai clan, used the Hashiman Inner Gate to fight against the Mist 7 swordsmen, who had an average strength of an elite jonin. With the identity of Konoha's genin shinobi, he killed 4 of them, and the other 3 escaped, which almost caused the Mist Village's 7 swordsmen to be eliminated from the shinobi world. Since then, the Mist Village has never been able to gather another 7 swordsmen, and the 7 Days Call of the Sand Crypsis has shown a momentum comparable to the Hashiman Inner Gate. Although its potential hasn't been further confirmed, Mai can't turn a blind eye to it. In addition to testing each other, the 5 villages also began to pay attention to the Sound Village, which they didn't pay much attention to before. This is because the performance of the Sound Village this time was too dazzling, especially Kimimaro and Haku. Both of them showed the potential of a Kage, which made the other 5 villages envious. Such a genius, even in the 5 great shinobi villages, would be heavily nurtured as a Kage or an elder-level cultivation. Not only that, but the Sound Village seems to have mastered some kind of secret technique that allows them to change their forms. Among the 6 Sound Ninja candidates, Kimimon, Uzumaki, Onikomu, and Toyo all activated this special state one after another, and then their speed, strength, and even chakra's amount all greatly improved. Excellent talents that even the 5 villages are jealous of, as well as strange and powerful secret techniques, all came from a small village that had just been established, which made the 5 villages feel puzzled. As the host, when Konoha learned that Kimimaro was sick, it directly sent the most powerful medical ninja in the shinobi world, Tsunade, to treat him while inquiring about the secret of the Sound Village, especially the secret technique that allows them to change their forms. Even Tsunade was interested in it. Of course, Tsunade doesn't know about this secret technique of the Sound Village. In fact, she has already dealt with it a long time ago. She was responsible for treating Red Bean, who was infused with the Heavenly Seal by Orochimaru. But for the sake of Red Bean's safety, she applied a sealing technique on Red Bean's Heavenly Seal, and Red Bean never tried to use the power of the Heavenly Seal, so Red Bean didn't know that Kimimon and the others were using the Heavenly Seal developed by Orochimaru. After a while, Asuma, the chief examiner for the second round of the exam, walked up to the stage and announced to the candidates below, "The third round of the exam will be held in 7 days, and the great names of the 5 countries will also be present." Hearing that the daimyo of the 5 major countries would attend the third exam, there was a big commotion among the candidates. After raising his hands to signal the examinees to be quiet, Asuma said, "Because the famous names will be attending, in order to control the length of the third round of examination, we will now add a competition at the last minute. The winner will obtain the precious slot to participate in the third round of examination 7 days later." Hearing that there was a competition, many candidates became nervous, especially people like Sasuke, who had consumed a lot of energy and hadn't recovered yet. Their faces were full of apprehension. Asuma continued, "For the sake of safety, dangerous ninjutsu and secret techniques are prohibited in this competition." Deadale asked, "What kind of ninjutsu is considered dangerous?" Asuma replied snappily, "Dust release is a dangerous ninjutsu." Heh. Deadale chuckled and didn't ask anymore. The list of matches will be displayed there. After pointing to an electronic monitor on the wall in the distance, Asuma said, "The list is completely random. I wish everyone good luck." As soon as Asuma's voice fell, the list of matches began to flash on the monitor. The candidates looked over and saw the constantly flashing list of matches on the monitor. Finally, it locked onto the names of Maelstrom Naruto and Xianglin. Deadale smiled and said, "There's a good show to watch." Druid's eyes also focused as he looked at Xianglin. Because the monitor was damaged, Xianglin's battle wasn't captured by the monitoring room. But Deadale and Druid were very clear that Xiang Lin, who was next to Kirin in the mist, was far stronger than he looked. Moreover, Druid knew that Xiang Lin seemed to be a very powerful medical ninja. Kirin's previous injuries were more serious than his, but Xiang Lin arrived and healed Kirin in a moment. However, just as everyone was looking forward to a big battle, Xiang Lin suddenly said, "I'm sorry, but I forfeit." Huh? Naruto, who was preparing to show off his skills, was confused. Asuma was also startled and immediately announced, "The first match, Maelstrom Naruto wins." Following Xiang Lin's forfeit, the next few matches also directly forfeited. For example, in the second match, Sammy, who was fighting against Hyojin, didn't even fight and directly forfeited. In the fourth match, Sakura, who was fighting against Deadale, also chose to forfeit. In the competition, the injured Sasuke managed to defeat Kankuro with much difficulty after receiving a few new injuries. Darui defeated Akatsuki. Hope lost to Fu. Hei defeated Takanabu's Toki. Zila easily defeated Takanabu's Kuin, and Mizukage and Temari tied. As a result, among the 18 candidates from the 6 teams, Maelstrom Naruto, Hyojin, Deadale, Sasuke, Druid, Fu, Heitu, Jiluo, as well as Shuei and Shoju, who were finally given exception, successfully advanced to the third test. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, I would like to thank the students who gifted me today. Thank you. Chapter 981. Looking at the 10 candidates who advanced in front of them, the senior members of the shinobi village were quite satisfied. These 10 people almost represent the new generation of the entire shinobi world. They're the future of each shinobi village. Many of them will inevitably become the senior members of their respective villages in the future, and even the Kage. 3 generations, Naruto said at this time. Let the candidates go and rest. They're also very tired after a day of fighting. Itachi, who was disguised as Suijin, nodded, and then, as the 5th Hokage, announced to all the candidates present that the second round of the Chunin exam was officially over, and all the candidates were dismissed and reorganized. Swish, at this moment, Ebisu, who was holding a report in his hand, landed on the high platform. After handing the report to 3 generations Naruto, Ebisu said, "3 generations, Sama. The losses in the Forest of Death have been calculated. Here is the list. Please have a look." Listening to Ebisu's words, the senior members of the shinobi village all looked at him. 3 generations who took the statistical report glanced at it slightly, and immediately his face stiffened and questioned, 1 billion? How can there be such a big loss?" Ebisu glanced at the senior members of the shinobi village and deliberately coughed twice, and then explained loudly. According to the statistics of the Umbu and the shinobi school instructors, 68% of the area in the Forest of Death has been destroyed. More than 80% of the monitoring facilities were destroyed, and the internal buildings and the perception barrier on the edge were also damaged to varying degrees. Staring at the statistical report, 3 generations fell into silence. After a day of fighting, the Forest of Death almost changed. Not only were various facilities seriously damaged, but the animals and plants in the forest were also hit unprecedentedly, and the entire ecosystem was completely destroyed. Apart from a loss of equipment, the recovery of animals and plants, and the restoration of the ecosystem is the real problem. And this is not even a problem that can be solved with money. After all, the current Mai no longer has the would-release ninja. This kind of problem can be solved by a ninjutsu when the first generation was still here, but now it must be solved with hundreds of millions of funds and a lot of manpower and time costs. At this time, the 3 generations silently gave Ebisu a look. Kabisu immediately said loudly, "According to our statistics, the battle between the hidden mist Kirin and the hidden cloud druid, as well as Rock Village's Dedale's unrestrained use of detonating clay during the exam, are the main reasons for the Forest of Death's destruction." The 3 generations looked at Tsuchikage, Mizukage, Lei Ying, and Kazekage and said, Everyone, this Chunin exam is jointly held by our 5 great ninja villages, so the maintenance cost of the venue should naturally be borne by us 5 great ninja villages, not to mention the situation of today's exam. So this maintenance cost. Without waiting for 3 generations Naruto to finish his words, 3 generations Inoki smiled and said, "I'm really sorry. Our rock village is still under reconstruction, so we can't help you. Next time. With that, 3 generations Inoki directly used heavy rock jutsu and flew away in front of everyone's eyes. Even with 3 generations Naruto's calm, he didn't expect that 3 generations Tsuchikage could do this. After a while, he turned his eyes to 4 generations Laying. That battle was obviously provoked by the Kirin of the Mist Village. The other side took the initiative to find the druid, so the main responsibility is the Mist Village. How much the Mist Village compensate? We will compensate. After leaving a sentence, 4 generations Laying left. 3 generations Naruto had to look at 4 generations Mizuki Jigura. At this time, Mei, who was standing behind Jigura, stood up and said with a bitter smile, "3 generations Naruto. The situation of our Mist Village, I must be clear about it. Although the previous turmoil has subsided, the village has been greatly damaged, and the financial has fallen into deficit. In addition, your village's traitorous Danzo made a mess in our water country, killed dozens of our ninjas, and destroyed one of our military bases. So, as soon as the Mist Village mentioned Danzo, 3 generations immediately swallowed back their words. Zhuan Shaochun also turned his head to the side in embarrassment. "I'm sorry." After bowing to Mai and the others, 4 generations Mizuki Jigura didn't stay and hurriedly left with Mei and Aojirai. What he was most afraid to hear now was money-related. In the blink of an eye, Tsuchikage, Laying, and Mizukage all slipped away. 3 generations Naruto had to look at 4 generations Kazekage. 4 generations Kazekage took the initiative to come over, seriously looked at the loss report, and sighed. Sigh. This report didn't mention the candidates of our Sancrypsis. It's really shameful. While sighing, Yandame Kazekage left with his guards. As a result, only 3 generations Naruto, Zhuan Shaochun, Ebisu, and Itachi, who disguised as Hyojin, were left on the high platform. After a while, Zhuan Shaochun said angrily, "These shameless guys, we shouldn't have had any expectations from them." 3 generations Naruto held his forehead with his hand. It seems that the cost of rebuilding the Forest of Death can only be borne by us. Zhuan Shaochun immediately said, "Don't mention 1 billion, even 500 million. The village can't afford it now." Mai is indeed the village with the best geographical location and the wealthiest among the 5 great shinobi villages. Otherwise, it would be impossible for a mere advisory elder of the Danzo to support so many experiments and raise so many subordinates. It's just that after a series of vicious events, such as the destruction of the village and the betrayal of the Danzo, Mai's finances have long been in trouble. For this reason, even the reconstruction of the first, second, 3 generations, and 4 generations Naruto Rock, which was unanimously approved by the advisory elder group, was temporarily put on hold. Therefore, the village really can't afford the high reconstruction cost. 3 generations said to Itachi, who disguised as Hyojin, "Kuroto, the Forest of Death is at the edge of the village. It's an important node of our defense. Reconstruction is urgent." Itachi nodded immediately. He knows that 3 generations is right. For the safety of the village, the defense and monitoring of the Forest of Death must be rebuilt immediately. 3 generations continued. At present, the village can't afford this amount of money, so it seems that we, the senior leaders, need to make some sacrifices. At least, we need to restore the perception barrier outside the Forest of Death and the internal monitoring system. Itachi was puzzled. Sacrifice? 3 generations nodded and said, "I propose that starting from this Naruto, all the senior leaders, including our advisory elder group, cancel all the salaries and subsidies for this year." Almost without hesitation, Itachi nodded. That's what we should do. In his opinion, Naruto should sacrifice for the village, and he was sure that if Hyojin was here, he would not hesitate to agree to take out his salary and subsidies to support the village. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 982. Seeing that Itachi, who pretended to be Hyojin, agreed so readily, the three generations narrowed their eyes slightly, and they swallowed all the words that they were about to continue to persuade him, and a trace of doubt flashed in their eyes. But soon the doubts in the three generations' eyes disappeared, and they said as usual, I'm afraid that just the salary and subsidies that we offer are not enough. You haven't spent the 100 million from last time, right? Itachi pondered and didn't answer immediately. Even as experienced as the three generations, the subtle changes in the expressions on their faces couldn't escape his insight, so he immediately noticed that the three generations were suspicious of him. Where did I reveal the flaw? As Itachi pondered, he could not figure it out. In order to pretend to be Hyojin, he really put in a lot of effort, not to mention the most basic expressions and gestures. Even the words and sentences he spoke were very close to Hyojin's habits. And after recalling the conversation just now, he found that the entire conversation just now was normal. There was neither a topic involving the secrets of the village, nor did it talk about Hyojin's privacy. Such an ordinary conversation shouldn't have the possibility of being exposed. But the three generations were obviously suspicious, which made it a little difficult for him to understand. Is it a secret word to cancel the salary and subsidies? But Senpai didn't mention it to me. The more Itachi analyzed, the more confused he was. He always felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what was wrong. Seeing that Itachi didn't speak for a long time, the doubts in the eyes of the three generations faded a little, and they smiled casually. I don't mean anything else. If you don't want to, I can understand. Test. This must be a test. Itachi's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly analyzed how Kuroda would answer such a question. In his mind, Hyojin is a person who dared to create an organization that bears all the hatred in order to maintain the stability of the village and to reconcile with Uchiha. He is a Mai ninja who dared to fight against the leader of the Akatsuki who possessed the Rinnegan. He is a Naruto who doesn't discriminate against all the villagers, including Uchiha. I'm really stupid. Isn't it obvious what choice Senior will make? After secretly mocking himself, Itachi met the eyes of the three generations and said, if the village needs me, I will do my best. Three generations chuckled. That's great. Our advisory group of elders will also do our best to raise funds. After discussing the issue of raising funds, Itachi bade farewell and left the training ground. After Itachi left, the doubts in the eyes of the three generations immediately returned. Seeing this, Zhuan Xiaochun asked, what's wrong? Frowning, the three generations said slowly, I don't know, but I always feel that there is something wrong with Kuroda. Something wrong? Startled, Zhuan Xiaochun asked, how come I don't see it? Because of the incident where the Akatsuki used Jinjutsu to control the Mizukage, all the major shinobi villages pay great attention to the identity of the high-level members, and Ryumai chakra can't be disguised, so Zhuan Xiaochun didn't doubt Itachi's identity. Three generations said, don't you think it's strange that he is willing to take out the previous 100 million? In the beginning, for that 100 million, he bargained with me for a long time, and even threatened me to give the position of Naruto to Uchiha Fuyue. Zhuan Xiaochun pondered for a moment and said, it's indeed a bit strange, but today is different from the past. After all, he is now Naruto, so it's normal for him to have some changes in his thinking. Sandaime-sama clasped his hands behind his back and shook his head. No, he looks too much like Hokage. Itachi obviously doesn't understand that the reason why he revealed a flaw is not because of any other reason, but because he is too similar to Naruto. My hospital. After finishing the examination of Kimamaro's body, Tsunade left the ward with a frown. At this time, Haku and Yugo, who had been waiting outside the ward, greeted Tsunade and asked, Tsunade-sama, how is Kimamaro? Jiraiya, who was also waiting outside the ward, smiled and said, hee hee, You can rest assured, Tsunade is currently the best medical ninja in the shinobi world. With her help, your companion's illness will definitely be fine. Tsunade shook her head and said, I have injected him with painkillers, and the condition is temporarily under control, but I don't have any clue how to completely solve this disease. Even you can't do anything? Haku and Yugo immediately showed a disappointed expression. Jiraiya was also quite surprised. Tsunade, even you can't do anything about that child's illness? Tsunade explained, he is not suffering from an ordinary disease, but a malignant disease rooted in the bone marrow and blood. If I'm not wrong, this disease is likely related to his Kekii Genkai. It's a kind of Kekii Genkai disease. Kekii Genkai disease? Jiraiya's face sank and said, this is troublesome. For Kekii Genkai ninja, Kekii Genkai disease is almost equivalent to cancer. Most Kekii Genkai diseases are incurable diseases, and even if a small number of Kekii Genkai can be cured, after being cured, the Kekii Genkai of the Shinobi Genkai will be greatly weakened, so those who suffer from Kekii Genkai almost never have a good ending. At this time, Tsunade asked Haku and Yugo, I checked his body. He seems to have taken some kind of medicine to suppress Kekii Genkai disease. Was this medicine developed by your village? Haku nodded. Well, it was developed by my village. After getting an affirmative answer from Haku, Tsunade was surprised and said, I didn't expect your village to have such attainments in medicine and medical ninjutsu. The kind of medicine to suppress his Kekii Genkai disease. Even our village couldn't develop it in a short time. Can you tell me who made this medicine? Haku naturally can't say the name of Orochimaru, so he can only shake his head with an apologetic look. I'm sorry. Tsunade also knows that it's not good to pry into the secrets of other villages, so she didn't ask any more questions, but said, let him stay in my hospital for observation for a while. I will find a way to cure him. Sorry to trouble you. Haku and Yugo bowed towards Tsunade once again. Tsunade didn't say anything more and went back to her office with Jiraiya. Seeing that no one was around, Jiraiya hurriedly asked, You really can't cure that Sound Kid's disease? Tsunade looked at Kimimura's medical report and said with a solemn expression, My yang-release chakra was inexplicably decomposed as soon as it entered his body. There seems to be some special substance in his blood. Jiraiya asked, What special substance? I'm not too sure at the moment. After shaking her head, Tsunade sighed and said, With his physical condition, it's already incredible that he's still alive. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the classmate who tipped today. Thank you. Chapter 983. When she was developing medical ninjutsu, Tsunade had studied many ninja corpses, many of which at Kekii Genkai, but because of various reasons, she didn't study the Kagaya clan in depth, so she didn't know much about the Kagaya clan's bone vein. Therefore, she always scoffed at all the exaggerated rumors about the Kagaya clan in the Mist World. She didn't think that the physique of the Kagaya clan was really as strong as the rumors said, that was comparable to the Senju clan and the Uzumaki clan of the Land of Whirlpools. But after examining Kimimura's body, she suddenly realized that her previous evaluation of the Kagaya clan seemed to be too subjective. With Kimimura's condition, in her opinion, it was impossible for him to live until now, especially the special substance in his bone marrow and blood that could decompose her yang chakra. It was the most terrifying substance she had ever seen. His bone marrow and blood were invaded by this substance, but he can still fight like a dragon and a tiger. What kind of physique is this? In front of the facts, even the arrogant Tsunade had to admit that the Kagaya clan's physique was extraordinary. It was very likely that the Kagaya clan was the same as the Senju clan and the Uzumaki clan. Seeing that Tsunade couldn't do anything about Kimimura's condition, Jiraiya sighed. I didn't expect such a small sound village to have so many unexpected things. Tsunade glanced at Jiraiya and asked, What other unexpected things? Jiraiya's expression suddenly became serious. The boy named Haku from the Sound Village has mastered the immortal jutsu. What? Tsunade was taken aback. She wasn't unfamiliar with immortal jutsu, so she was very clear about the difficulty of practicing it. In the entire history of the My Clan, only the first Naruto and the current half-baked Jiraiya and Naruto successfully mastered it. This is indeed an incredible thing. After a pause, Jiraiya sighed. But this is the truth. That young man has already admitted it to me. After learning from the Invigilator that Haku is suspected to have mastered the spirit arts, Jiraiya hurried to the hospital and confirmed the information with Haku himself. Tsunade was puzzled and asked, where did he learn the immortal arts? It can't be Shiko Forest or Mount Mayaboku. Could it be Longqi Cave? Jiraiya shook his head. It's not the Dragon Pit Cave. Tsunade's doubts were also one of the reasons why he rushed to the hospital to confirm it. Because in the current shinobi world, only the 3 Holy Lands possess the inheritance of immortal jutsu. And with the relationship between Tsunade and Shikatsu Forest, if there is a ninja who has mastered immortal jutsu in Shikatsu Forest, there is no way that Tsunade wouldn't know about it. Similarly, if there is such a ninja in Mount Mayaboku, there is no way that Jiraiya wouldn't know about it. Therefore, after receiving the information from the Invigilator, Jiraiya's first reaction was the same as Tsunade's. He suspected that Haku learned the immortal jutsu from the Ryuchi Cave, and he also suspected that Haku is related to Orochimaru. But after confirming it, he found that Haku's immortal jutsu didn't come from the Ryuchi Cave, because Haku had just activated the Sage Mode in front of him, and Haku's Sage Mode was completely different from the one that Naruto learned in the Ryuchi Cave. There were no changes in his eyes, no horns on his head, and no scales on his cheeks. After listening to Jiraiya's explanation, Tsunade was stunned. How is this possible? That young man is a true genius. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't dare to believe that he's actually like an exceptional talent. He doesn't need to accumulate natural energy in advance to instantly activate immortal mode. Compared to him, Jiraiya laughed at himself and sighed. Tsunade frowned and said, this Sound Ninja Village is not simple. On the other side of the hospital, after receiving treatment, Sasuke walked out of the consultation room. At this time, the swelling on his face had completely disappeared, leaving only some inconspicuous bruises. When he was about to leave the hospital and go home, he saw Haku from the corner of his eyes, who was carrying a few boxes of bento to the inpatient department. His face darkened, and he followed Haku. Following Haku, Sasuke arrived outside Kimamaro's ward. Isn't this the ICU? Why is Kimamaro's room here? Why is he injured so badly? Did I hit him too hard? Thinking of this, Sasuke put his hands in his pockets and walked over coolly. He asked Haku and Yugo, who were eating their bento outside Kimamaro's ward, is his injury okay? Injury? After putting down the bento, Haku and Yugo were confused because Kimamaro wasn't injured at all. Instead, his illness had acted up. At this time, Sasuke gently pushed open the door of Kimamaro's ward. He glanced at the unconscious Kimamaro on the bed and immediately closed the door. He said to Haku and Yugo, I really didn't expect him to be injured so badly. But don't worry, our Uchiha is the richest family in Mai. Since he was injured by me, I will pay for all the expenses for his treatment. Haku opened his mouth and wanted to explain to Sasuke that Kimamaro wasn't injured, but his blood secondary disease had acted up. Before Haku could speak, Sasuke waved his hand and said, Don't thank me. Haku and Yugo looked at each other. Then, Sasuke said coldly, Now you should understand how dangerous it is to fight against our Uchiha on the battlefield. I have already said that you shouldn't have come to me. Haku thought for a while and finally said, I am very sorry. Sasuke looked at Haku from head to toe and said, You are also a very good opponent. Our previous battle was interrupted by someone, and we couldn't determine the winner. What a pity. Haku was not a person who cared about winning and losing, so he smiled and said, We are not as good as you. Sasuke said coolly, Don't be modest your strength is enough for me to take you seriously, but in front of our Uchiha clan Sharingan, any ninjutsu is useless." Haku didn't argue and just nodded. At this moment, Itachi appeared in the corridor and said to Sasuke, "Sasuke, it's time to go home." Obviously, this is one of Itachi's shadow doppelgangers. Because the ninja school is the main unit in charge of the Chunin exam, and Itachi is the vice principal of the ninja school. So when Itachi pretended to be Hyojin, he also divided a shadow doppelganger to be responsible for the work of the vice principal of the ninja school. When he learned that Sasuke was in the hospital, he rushed to the hospital to take Sasuke home. Sasuke nodded quickly and said to Haku, "Tell Kimimaro for me to take care of his injuries. If he is not convinced, he can challenge me at any time." Haku nodded and said, "Okay." The first update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 984. On the way home, Sasuke wanted to say something several times but hesitated. Seeing that he was about to reach the clan's territory, he said, "Brother, I'm sorry." Itachi said without emotion, "You don't need to apologize to me. You can represent the village to advance to the third exam. This performance is already very good." But Sasuke lowered his head with a gloomy face. He was forced into a desperate situation by Kimimaro and Haku several times during the exam. After all, Kimimaro's miserable state on the hospital bed just now made him feel much better, and his resentment towards the Sound Ninja also dissipated. But being attacked by the Kirin of the Mist Village and being beaten by an unknown grass ninja made him feel uneasy. Especially the grass ninja who humiliated him, it made him extremely embarrassed, because only he knew that he did have the thought of begging for mercy at that time. And every time he recalled that moment when he wanted to beg for mercy, he felt ashamed, feeling that he had failed to live up to the reputation of the Uchiha clan. Among all the candidates who advanced to the third exam, he was also one of the most embarrassed ones. He didn't show the prestige that a genius of the Uchiha clan should have. The accumulation of these factors made Sasuke not feel the slightest joy of advancing to the next exam. Looking at the depressed expression of Sasuke, Itachi wanted to comfort him. Because even if Sasuke was judged by the most stringent standards, Sasuke's performance today is impeccable. But considering Hyojin's arrangement and the plan to stimulate Sasuke to use the Manjikyu Sharingan, Kuroto had a heart in his heart and deliberately said, "Although it is shameful to be defeated by a grass ninja, but don't be too upset, I will explain it to father for you." Sasuke immediately showed his childish side and asked eagerly, "Will father forgive me?" Itachi said, "Don't worry, I will try my best to dispel father's unrealistic expectations of you." Sasuke suddenly looked depressed. Originally, he planned to defeat Deidale in the Chunin exam, inquire about Amatsukumi's information from Deidale's mouth, and recapture the Manjikyu Sharingan that was stolen by Amatsukumi for his father, but he never thought that he would be defeated by a mere Kusanagi shinobi. After returning to the mansion, both his father, Fuyue, and his mother, Mikoto, deliberately revealed disappointed expressions. Sasuke, who was covered in wounds and exhausted, suppressed his emotions and returned to his room alone. Looking at Sasuke's extremely dejected and depressed back view, Mikoto faintly sighed. "Sai, are we really doing the right thing?" Fuyue crossed his arms in front of his chest, his face solemn. "As my son, this is the fate he must bear." In fact, Kuroto is also very distressed about Sasuke, but after the experience of almost exterminating his family, he understands that strength is the foundation of survival. Only by awakening Sasuke's Manjikyu Sharingan, and then obtaining the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that will never dry up, will he be truly good to Sasuke. Mikoto sighed. "I hope that Sasuke can awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan as soon as possible." At this time, Fuyue asked Itachi, "Is there any new arrangement on the side of Godame-sama?" Itachi bowed and replied, "Naruto-sama will meet with me tonight. If there are any new instructions, I will immediately convey them to you." Fuyue nodded, and then asked, Was Sasuke really defeated by a Kusanagi shinobi? In a remote practice field in my village, Kakashi slowly printed the hand seals and lightly shouted, "Rachel!" Suddenly, in a burst of ZZ sound, a dazzling electric light flashed on his right hand. Maintaining Rachel in his hand, he did not attack the target in the practice field, but stood in the same place and closed his eyes as if he was feeling something. After a moment, he suddenly opened his eyes. At the same time, Rachel in his right hand also changed. The original blue electric light gradually became deeper and finally turned into the same purple color as the purple lightning that Hyojin used during the day. Staring at the shining purple electric light on his right hand, Kakashi showed a happy expression, success. But soon he restrained his happy expression, because he found that although the electric light generally turned purple, it was not completely changed. There was still a lot of ordinary blue electric light in it. It's just that the purple electric light was too strange and dazzling, so it covered the ordinary blue electric light. Phew! After gently exhaling, Kakashi removed Rachel. After witnessing the lightning battle between the Qilin and the hidden cloud druid, he was greatly inspired, especially the Qilin's purple lightning and the druid's black lightning, which let him clearly see the effect of a single attribute of chakra. It was like a guiding light that let him see the way forward. At that time, he had the urge to try, but as one of the invigilators, he not only shouldered the heavy responsibility of protecting the two pillars of Naruto and Fu, but also the responsibility of maintaining the order of the exam. So he suppressed this impulse and endured until the end of the exam. After completing the invigilator task, he immediately went to the practice field alone and explored the characteristics of a single attribute of lightning chakra. As someone with the title of copy ninja, although he doesn't have a Sharingan, but his perception of ninjutsu has not been lost, plus he has been studying the nature of a single lightning chakra. So today's experience was like dispelling the clouds and seeing the sun. He was suddenly enlightened, and with just one attempt, he successfully made a semi-finished product of violet lightning. Chapter 985. Late at night, Hyojin's home. Holding a teacup, Hyojin took a sip of tea while listening to Itachi's report leisurely. Although he participated in the Chunin exam as the Kirin of the Mist, he is only a candidate, and his grasp of the whole exam is very limited. In order to control the situation in real time, he left a shadow clone to act as the Kirin of the Mist in the guest house where the candidates were temporarily staying, and he changed back to his in-release body. Senpai, today's Chunin exam is roughly like this. After a pause, Itachi continued to report. At present, the advisory elder group unanimously believes that Kimimaro of the Sound Ninja, Haku, Druid of the Cloud Village, Dedale of the Rock Village, Violet of the Sand Crypsis, and Kirin of the Mist Village are worthy of attention. Hyojin nodded lightly. These people who were selected by the advisory elder group are indeed the best of the candidates. After hesitating for a moment, Itachi said, "In addition, I personally think that one of the candidates from the Grass Village is also worthy of the village's attention." Then, Itachi described the process of the Grass Ninja defeating Sasuke in detail and analyzed, although Sasuke was in a bad state at that time, and his chakra was almost exhausted, but with the help of the Sharingan, even if he faced a Jonin, Sasuke should be able to barely resist a few moves, but the other party knocked down Sasuke with only one punch, which is very abnormal. Hyojin took a sip of tea and listened quietly. Itachi continued. After the exam, I read the intelligence file of the Grass Ninja from the intelligence class, but the file shows that the other party is just a very ordinary Grass Ninja, which is obviously inconsistent with the facts. Hyojin smiled. He is actually Orochimaru in disguise. Orochimaru. Slightly taken aback, Itachi frowned. Then this time he disguised to participate in the Chunin exam and attack Sasuke. Is it because he is targeting Sasuke? Maybe. Itachi hurriedly asked, "Senior, do you need me to get rid of him?" Hyojin waved his hand indifferently. "Just keep an eye on him. I don't think he would dare to act recklessly in the village." Orochimaru's actions in the Chunin exam were actually a bit rash, but because there were too many candidates who performed well in the exam, no one noticed him for a while. However, because it involved Sasuke, he still entered Itachi's vision. Looking at Hyojin's expression as if everything was under his control, Itachi secretly admired him. Orochimaru managed to hide from all of us, but he couldn't escape from your insight. Sure enough, everything is under your control. Subsequently, Itachi handed the list of the losses in the Forest of Death to Hyojin and said, "Senior, this is the list of the losses that the village has calculated. Please take a look." After receiving the list, Hyojin scanned through it and instinctively frowned. 1 billion. Chapter 988. At this moment, a twisted whirlpool appeared beside Nagato, and then Obsidian walked out of the whirlpool. Glancing at the new 6 paths of pain in front of him, Obsidian asked, "How's the drill?" Nagato's tone was flat. "It's going well. Going well?" After a pause, Obsidian confirmed. "When can it be used in actual combat?" After pondering for a while, Nagato replied, "If there is no accident, it will take about 1 to 2 months. After all, the opponent is Yama. We can't have any carelessness." In fact, as far as the effect of the drill, just now, is concerned, the new 6 paths of pain can already be used in actual combat. Because including Chilabai's Hungry Ghost path, all 5 Jinchuriki can smoothly enter the tailed beast state and put on their own tailed beast chakra coat. Their combat power is far beyond the previous 6 paths of pain, and coupled with their respective Rinnegan abilities, their strength is greatly improved. However, considering that the opponent this time is the most powerful organization in the shinobi world, Yama, so the actual combat standards are naturally different. According to Nagato's idea, he feels that only the new 5-6 paths of pain can be trained to the point where they can be completely liberated and become tailed beasts in their full form. Can they really be used in actual combat? The masked man nodded. 1 to 2 months, right? That's good, so I can arrange it more easily. Nagato asked, "How are the 5 great shinobi villages?" The Obito sneered. "What Chunin exam? Both Kyuubi's Jinchuriki and Shikinoi's Jinchuriki are participating, but I think it's most likely a trap for us." Nagato asked again, "What about the Mizukage?" Obsidian replied, "He should also be in my. Since he got rid of my Jinjutsu control, he has become extremely careful. The people we placed in the mist can't find his whereabouts at all." Muttering these 2 words, Nagato's eyes gradually focused. At this moment, Little Nan suddenly asked, "Is there any news about First Tail?" It's been a few years since the Sand Crypsis executed the previous One Tail's Jinchuriki. One Tail should be resurrected at any time. Obsidian smiled and said, "Don't worry. Once the Sand Crypsis' black operation finds the resurrected One Tail in the desert, I'll be notified immediately. Don't forget, I have spies in all 5 great shinobi villages. Even Naruto is my informant." Listening to Obsidian mention Naruto, Nagato asked, "Is there any news from the Hyuga clan?" Obsidian showed disdain. "Those idiots of the Hyuga clan are still offering a bounty for the whereabouts of Hyuga Aoki, so they're mostly kept in the dark by Mai and Amatsukami. Hyojin's Naruto is also the product of a compromise between Mai's Naruto clan and Uchiha clan. He has no real power, so it will be difficult to get information about Amatsukami from them." Nagato frowned. "What about the Uchiha clan?